Yes! Hello, my beautiful friends. What an amazing day it is today. Criminal Referral for Obama Day. And we've got a new strike force that has just been formed by the DOJ. They just made this announcement minutes ago, and we're going to go through it in detail. Today was, I would say, historic. I think I would analogize it to the day that Biden came out and appointed Jack Smith, and we had the special counsel, and we saw that the whole floodgates were going to open against President Trump. We all could see the writing on the walls here, and I know that was a long journey that we all went through together. But now it feels like this is kind of the other side of that, right? The mirror image, it's like history in reverse, where the people who actually are the criminals are now being investigated. And so the strike force is now being formed, and we're going to come back on this. I want to spend a lot of the day going through the details on this, including what potential charges could be. I know a lot of people are saying this is ridiculous. Like, Obama's not going to get charged. Why wouldn't he? They charged a former president 4 times already and made civil affairs and attacks against him through attorneys general. And the list goes on and on. So why wouldn't they do it here? But anyways, today we're going to talk about seditious conspiracy. This came up this morning during our members only stream. We're asking what's the difference between all this and how could it apply to Obama? We also got treason queued up. We got some clips from Tulsi and reaction from many people today, including Ron Johnson, Jim Jordan, and Andy McCabe. And Caitlin Collins also got into it with everybody there in the press briefing room. But the main crux of this is this document. And I want to spend some time on this. It's a 46-pager, lots of nuggets in here. But I think this is an anchor point right now this week, where the Tulsi Gabbard drops are now, I think, going to be setting the foundation for the future criminal prosecution of some of the worst conspirators and traitors, possibly, in American history, at least modern American history. So we're going to talk about that and spend some time on it. I got reaction and more. And so it's going to be just a beautiful stream. Thank you for subscribing and joining as we get into it. And so without any further ado, let's go. The DOJ, Pam Bondi, now announcing a strike force. We had Tulsi Gabbard also today confirm that we're talking about Obama getting a criminal referral over to the DOJ. She was asked about that. She also released this entire new X thread that chronicles all the crimes, in addition to this massive report, which is now revealed and declassified to the American people. So we're going to go through it all. But the DOJ is now catching the ball. Okay, Tulsi came out. She's throwing it over to the DOJ. We've been asking, what are they going to do about this? Are they going to appoint a special counsel? Are they going to come Jack Smith this whole thing up? We've been waiting to see what Pam will do. And we've been encouraging proper action. So the DOJ posted this. The Justice Department today, this was just minutes ago, right before the show started. They wanted to make sure we got it in time for the show. Thank you for that, DOJ. They say Justice Department announces formation of strike force to assess evidence publicized by Tulsi Gabbard, which we're going to dig into like a delicious meatball. Now, here is what they posted. Today, the DOJ announced the formation of a strike force. This better be not be like a phase 1 type thing, okay? To assess the evidence publicized by the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, and to investigate potential next steps, legal steps, which might stem from Tulsi's disclosures. Now, this department takes alleged weaponization of the intelligence community with the utmost seriousness, and upon the formation of the strike force, which sounds awesome, I'd like to be a part of it, Attorney General Pamela Bondi said the following: the Department of Justice is proud to work with my friend, Director Gabbard, and we are grateful for her partnership in delivering accountability for the American people. We will investigate these troubling disclosures fully and leave no stone unturned to deliver justice. Okay, stones now. Well, just don't put the stones on your desk. All right, so here is what Tulsi had to say. And she's explaining that it is Obama that is also the one who's being referred to for prosecution. Tulsi was out. She spoke for a long time today, but this was a very pointed question from this journo who said the following. Are you talking about Barack?
Do you believe that any of this new information implicates former President Obama in criminal behavior?
We have referred and will continue to refer all of these documents to the Department of Justice and the FBI to investigate the criminal implications of this.
For even former President Obama?
Correct. The evidence that...
For even Obama, Tulsi says correct.
Of this.
For even former President Obama?
Correct. The evidence that we have found and that we have released directly point to President Obama leading the manufacturing of this intelligence assessment. There are multiple pieces of evidence and intelligence that confirm that fact.
Yeah.
Ed, go ahead.
Director Gabbard, thank you. So just two questions, but to begin on that. The president yesterday, you've inferred that the former president helped lead a coup. Based on what you now see, do you believe President Obama is guilty of treason?
I'm leaving the criminal charges to the Department of Justice. I am not an attorney, but as I've said previously, when you look at the intent behind creating a fake manufactured intelligence document that directly contradicts multiple assessments that were created by the intelligence community, the expressed intent and what followed afterward can only be described as a years-long coup and a treasonous conspiracy against the American people, our republic, and an attempt to undermine President Trump's administration.
Yeah, baby, let's go. That sounds right. That sounds accurate. Nailed it. 10 out of 10. A++, 5-star review. Would listen to again. It was well done, and it's exactly right. And this is something that we have been waiting to hear for a long time. It's very interesting to have Tulsi Gabbard come out and deliver it. And there was more in the post. So we're going to go through the post. Then we're going to take a look at some potential charges. And we'll see, well, this is what the evidence says. And in fact, let's look at the charges first, and then we can apply the evidence to what the law says. And here is what we've got in two possibilities. Now, people are throwing these around and saying, well, is this treason? I mean, they're talking about treasonous conspiracy. They're talking about seditious conspiracy, right? This was trying to be a coup attempt to subvert the American government away from the president into Hillary Clinton's teat. And now what you can see is this is the actual law. 18 U.S. Code 2384 comes over from Cornell. They've got a nice compendium of all the statutes. They say if two or more persons in any state or territory, like Obama, Brennan, Comey, and all of them, or in any place subject to the jurisdiction of the United States, which is America, if they conspire to overthrow, to put down, or to destroy by force the government of the United States, or, right, to levy war against them, or to oppose by force the authority thereof, or by force to prevent, hinder, or delay the execution of any law, or by force seize, take, or possess any property of the United States contrary to the authority thereof, you know, like the White House, which didn't belong to you, Obama. They each shall be fined under this title or in prison not more than 20 years or both. Okay, so there's a lot of conduct in there. So it's not just war, seditious conspiracy, a much broader statute. And remember, the Proud Boys got charged with this. The Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers, all with seditious conspiracy. And you know what their crime was ultimately? Sending text messages in Telegram groups and being there and going into the building. And many of them were defensive of law enforcement. And we saw that come out in evidence. But they were also outnumbered by government co-conspirators in the form of Homeland Security investigators who were in there in the crowd, likely instigating the whole thing. And the pipe bomb guy was never found. That diverted all the attention away from the Capitol building, and people just walked in. In fact, cops were tapping people on the shoulder. We played the videos here many times. So this, yeah, of course, two or more people to oppose by force the authority thereof of the incoming president, right? By the statute, by the traditions, by the precedent. The president incoming should get new presidential daily briefings and be familiar with what's actually going on. Now, this is not what was allowed to happen, right? They were trying to keep him under the radar and set him up for a Russia collusion scam. So that's one statute. You can see how we can apply that one. Here's treason now. 18 U.S. Code 2381. And a lot of this was codified, but a lot of this came from, obviously, the Constitution. Article 3, Section 3, treason, Clause 1 from the Constitution. Treason against the United States shall consist only in levying war against them, or in adhering to their enemies, giving them aid and comfort. No person shall be convicted of treason unless on the testimony of 2 witnesses to the same overt act or on a confession in open court. And there was a case here involving Aaron Burr. You remember his name. And they gave us a little snippet over here. And remember that there was a Chief Justice called John Marshall, the same guy who gave us Marbury versus Madison, a seminal case that established judicial review in American jurisprudence. And in this case, they say after authoring the Supreme Court's decision in Ex parte Bowman, in which the court ordered the discharge of 2 of Aaron Burr's associates. Okay, so a prior case, and Aaron Burr's people were discharged. It says Chief Justice presided over the treason trial. So we got some historical precedent for other people who have been charged with treason. Now, Chief Justice, he denied a motion to introduce certain collateral evidence bearing on Burr's activity. Okay, so certain evidence couldn't come in. He says, well, that's not really relevant here, so I'm going to keep that out. And what that means is that the standard is high in how you can introduce evidence, ultimately. So in brief, Chief Justice Marshall's ruling held that Burr, who had not been present on the island, he wasn't physically there at the island, whether he could be convicted of advising or procuring or levying war if 2 people said so. He said, well, Chief Justice Marshall, well, the operation had been covert, so the testimony, because it's covert, is naturally unobtainable, but the pronouncement of all this means that in practice, it's extremely difficult to convict one of levying war against the United States, short of conduct of or personal participation in actual hostilities, right? So, like, there's some precedent in that from a very early 1807 Supreme Court case where, treason is actual hostilities. And Chief Justice Marshall was trying to essentially save Aaron Burr. And Chief Justice Marshall did a lot of that, where he was trying to just kind of create these resolutions. And he did that in Marbury versus Madison, just kind of said, well, this is what we're going to do, and solve these conflicts using the courts to do it, which some people might say is highly inappropriate. But that is what the Constitution says. Then the statute codifies that, 18 U.S. Code 2381, for treason, saying whoever owing allegiance to the United States, like Obama would, levies war against them or adheres to their enemies, giving them aid and comfort within the United States or elsewhere, is guilty of treason and shall suffer death, or shall be in prison not less than 5 years and fined under the title, and shall be incapable of holding any office under the United States. And so that's a big one, right? And the question, of course, who is an enemy of the United States? Is a group of coup co-conspirators who were conspiring to seize power? Is that an enemy? Is that a domestic enemy? Is that a foreign enemy? How would all this be applied? So lots of questions surrounding that, and we'll see if anything comes of it, right? And the strike force has now been formed, and that will come to some sort of conclusion. We'll see if we get a special counsel. We'll see if this is just the opening salvo or what comes next. But we had Tulsi Gabbard out. We also had Caroline Leavitt, and she was out today with an announcement before Tulsi came out. So Caroline will give us a little of an introduction, and then we'll jump into the meat and potatoes on this thing, because we got 46 pages of corruption to review that was emanating out of the Democrats. Here is Caroline Leavitt from today.
Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard has unveiled shocking new evidence that former President Barack Obama and top aides in the Obama administration conspired to subvert President Trump's 2016 election victory and undermine the democratic will of the American people. While publicly pretending to engage in a peaceful transfer of power, in private, former President Obama went to great and nefarious lengths to try to sow discord among the public and sabotage his successor, President Trump. The new evidence released by the Director of National Intelligence, who is here with me today, confirms that the Obama administration manufactured politicized intelligence, which was later used as the justification for baseless smears against President Trump in an effort to try to delegitimize his victory before he even took the oath of office. The truth is that President Trump never had anything to do with Russia, and the Russia collusion hoax was a massive fraud perpetuated on the American people from the very beginning. And the worst part of this is Obama knew that truth, and so did all of the other corrupt officials involved in this scam, including former CIA Director John Brennan, former Director of National Intelligence James Clapper, former FBI Director James Comey, former Deputy Director Andrew McCabe, and many others. Director of National Intelligence Gabbard's report further confirms what we already knew. There was no collusion, no corruption, except on the part of Barack Obama and the weaponized intelligence agencies at the time. The Russia hoax was a blatant lie, all ginned up by Democrat political operatives that were signed off on by then President Obama and leaked to the news media to launch a years-long witch hunt against President Trump and his first administration. Allies of the president, including his own son, Donald Trump Jr., were disgustingly smeared as Russian assets, and some even had their lives destroyed because of this vicious lie. The president's first 2 years in office had this fake distraction hanging over it, and endless resources, time, and political capital were spent having to debunk these lies from the highest levels of our government.
Thanks, Obama.
Now, nearly 10 years later, thanks to the declassification of documents by Director Gabbard, the truth has finally come to light.
And we're going to take a look at it. We're excited to do that. Now, here's what Tulsi posted over on X today. She said, hey, new evidence has emerged of the most egregious weaponization and politicization of intelligence in American history. And I know there's a lot of doubt about whether this is going to come to anything. And you can just be clear about this. If it doesn't come to anything, if nobody gets charged, if we just fast forward 2 years and it's all just, we can't do anything, conflicts, or we have some privileges, or we think Supreme Court, if we get some garbage excuses and we fast forward to this, it will be one of the most embarrassing failures in modern American history, okay? Because they're coming out here in like 10 out of 10 overdrive, swinging for the fences. Tulsi Gabbard calling out Obama specifically. Trump called it out from the Oval Office. And if they then don't deliver on this, it's going to be really pathetic. So per President Trump's directive, I have declassified a House Intel Oversight Majority Staff report that exposes how the Obama administration manufactured the January 2017 intelligence community assessment that they knew was false, promoting the lie that Vladimir Putin and Russia helped Trump win. Now, in doing so, they conspired to subvert the will of the American people, working with their partners in the media to promote the lie in order to undermine the legitimacy of Trump, essentially enacting a years-long coup against him. So here are the top files that were debunked by the release today. And it's the document that we are going to go through in just a moment. But Tulsi continued. She says, here you can see a little bit of a mind map, which we're big fans of here. You can see there was a real intelligence assessment. Trump won the election. There was a brief that was pulled off Obama's desk because they didn't want him to have this brief that said, actually, Russia didn't do anything. Then the secret meeting happened on 12/9, December 9th. Then Obama issues the order per the president's request. IC comes back, the intelligence community, gets a new task from Obama. Well, the election was hacked, wasn't it? CIA warns John Brennan. We don't have direct information that Putin wanted Trump elected at all. Another intelligence official says the Steele dossier, which was Hillary Clinton's propaganda, was a factor in the Obama intelligence brief. Okay, so it's fake. The brief was based on Hillary's propaganda that they knew was fake, but they just needed a fake justification for it, like, well, choose that. And they used it. So then they politicized the intelligence. The intelligence report was subject to unusual directives from the president, says some other person, saying that Obama was nudging this along. We got Loretta Lynch, as we saw yesterday, was funneling information to Hillary's campaign. Comey and the rest of them were listening to conversations with Debbie Wasserman Schultz saying, don't worry about Hillary. She deleted her emails, so she's never going to get in trouble by the FBI because we got it all rigged. Loretta Lynch meeting with Bill Clinton on the tarmac. And so, yeah, it was a pretty interesting time. Now, intelligence officials disregarded behavior that undermined the idea that Putin wanted to help Trump, and that's what they ran with. So then they leak it all, goes to the New York Times, goes to NBC News, goes to the Washington Post, fake hack media, and they publish all the stories like good little automatons who can't think for themselves. Fake weaponized assessment comes out, and boom, pencil neck Schiff. And this looks like pencil neck Mueller, too. They give him a little bit of a longer neck there or something. But they ran with it and, of course, lied through their teeth about it. And then they came back down and they changed everything. Like, well, Russia, like, touched our elections. So they were, like, involved and they, like, meddled is the word they use. Meddled. What does that even mean? Nothing. It doesn't mean anything. That's why they used it, because they meddled in the election. Okay, great. Great job. And it sounds more ominous than Russia, probes. And you would imagine every country's kind of nudging each other. And we've seen that. Even Ted Cruz admitted that. The Israelis are spying on us. We're spying on them. He's like, whatever. It's not a big deal. So you would imagine that a lot of that's going on. And so they just take something that is kind of standard, routine, nation state, international election nearing whatever's going on, and they turn that into something that it isn't, and they use Hillary Clinton's propaganda to do it. They're sick. Now, Tulsi says, here's a lie. They came out and they said Putin and the Russian government helped Trump win because their attempt was trying to invalidate it. But the truth is that Obama and the former director of the CIA, John Brennan, and others fabricated this entire hoax. They suppressed intelligence showing that actually Putin wanted or was preparing for a Clinton victory and held information that he thinks would have been damaging to a Clinton administration back. They made up findings from shoddy sources. They disobeyed intelligence community standards, and they knowingly lied to the American people. And attorneys and prosecutors in particular are kind of looking at that as a term of art. You know what I mean? Knowingly lied? Knowingly, that's going towards a mens rea. That's somebody's mindset, right? That's intent. Guilty mind. And they knew what they were doing. And that's a hard thing to prove in many cases. Because what do you mean? They knew it was false and they did it anyways? Wow. You got evidence to support that? Because Obama's response, of course, is going to come back and he's going to say, I just got my intelligence briefing is what I thought was delivered to me. And somebody told me this and I'm the president. I got to make decisions and blah, blah, blah. So you say, you knowingly knew, you guys knew it was wrong and you did it anyways. Now you're busted. Here's another lie from Tulsi. The fabricated Steele dossier was not used as a source in the Obama administration and their assessment, okay? The Steele dossier, a fake report that Hillary Clinton tried to shove down the FBI's gullet, and then they invalidated it, right? It's ridiculous. And then they incorporated it into their report. It's a false pretense. It's fraud. Not only did the CIA director, Brennan, and Comey and Clapper and others include the Steele dossier because they needed like some extra, like a page limit. It's like, you have to turn it's 30 pages, turn it in. Like, we got like 20. Like, what else we got? It's not good enough. So we need this one. Get it. It's how many? Okay, perfect. Put that in there. 31 pages. Perfect. And Clapper and others, they overruled senior intel officials who said this was fabricated. You can't use this as a basis for your intelligence decisions and what to do with Trump. And they said it should not be used. But the hacks, Brennan, Comey, and Clapper, the criminal co-conspirators, overruled the actual intelligence. Here's another lie. The Obama administration in their January report was an independent intelligence community product produced with apolitical analysis from the same John Brennan and the CIA entity that organized the cover-up of Hunter Biden, right? It's the same people. Here's the truth from Tulsi. Obama ordered the intelligence community to create an intelligence community assessment that they knew was false, promoting a contrived narrative with the intent of undermining the legitimacy and the power of a duly elected president of the United States, Donald Trump. And together with the records released today, Tulsi says, plus what we released last week on Friday that we also covered here, plus the Clinton Annex, which we saw from Chuck Grassley yesterday here, they released earlier this week. They say, this is very clear. Plus the House Oversight Report that we released today that we're about to read, confirm what many Americans have known. The Russia hoax was a lie that was knowingly, again, term of art, created by the Obama administration to undermine the legitimacy and the power of the duly elected president of the United States, Donald Trump. And so Tulsi's essentially, laying out a structure for an indictment there, making the criminal referral over to Pam Bondi, and Bondi creates the strike force. So we'll see what she does from here. Now, we've also got more. This is the report that is the juicy bit. Tulsi Gabbard drops the mother load. 46 pages now approved for release by the Director of National Intelligence. And this comes in conjunction with other reports that we've covered here. She released another massive trove of documents And Chuck Grassley released a Clinton annex. And now this is just another 46 pages that we can see that are adding fuel to the fire and fueling demands for criminal prosecutions of Obama, Comey, Clapper, and John Brennan. And so we'll go through this in some detail. You can see this was originally released, it looks like September 18, 2020. And it's entitled The Intelligence Community Assessment, the ICA. It's a review of the prior report, Russia's Influence Campaign, targeting the 2016 presidential election. Now, here's what we've got. Saying, this is the intelligence report, the ICA Oversight, Investigation, and Referral. Okay, so it's a review of the original report. Got it. All right, so here is what they say. Why are we doing this study? So what did we need to do to go back to look at the original report? They say, the conclusions of the original report was titled this. Okay, the original report, Russian Influence Campaign Targeting the 2016 Presidential Election, saying that raised concerns that Russia was attempting to undermine confidence in U.S. elections. And that's a pretty big statement. So they had to do a comprehensive examination of the original report. So the original report came down, as we know, sometime around 2016 after the 12/9 meeting. I think it was actually 2017, in early January, whatever that date was. So then now in 2020, 4 years later, we get an oversight investigation of that report, and we got to do an analysis. Now they dove deep on this. Investigators compared the Obama report and their analytic tradecraft. So you go and you're looking for a nice wooden rocking chair, and you're an expert in rocking chairs, and you know exactly how it's constructed beautifully and how it's going to be amazing and how they don't make them like that anymore. And you know all the things about it. And so you can assemble it because you're a woodsman, you're a craftsman, you know how to do that stuff. And you can see when it's a crap rocking chair that hasn't been constructed with beautiful craftsmanship. And you can make that distinction. So they're doing the same thing here. They say, we've got all these rules. Like, we got good tradecraft, we got crap tradecraft. And so let's analyze this. And so they did that. We've got the analytic standards that we have to follow. And so we reviewed. In fact, investigators spent 2,300 hours reviewing their report and its source reports. It's a lot of time. Mostly at CIA headquarters, mostly in compartmented report vaults, and on the outside related research. Now, in addition, 20 interviews were conducted of intelligence officers or FBI agents who were associated with managing or drafting the report, and a production of raw reporting cited as sources. So they give us some recommendations, and these recommendations are always mostly crap, which is why, when's the last time we got anything meaningful from a congressional investigation or even a really special counsel? Mueller delivered nothing. John Durham delivered nothing, right? Like, in other words, the people in power protect themselves and they never prosecute themselves, no matter who's in charge. It's kind of one of these things, which is why we get so irritated about this when we thought we were going to get some prosecutions for Epstein, or at least some transparency on that. That didn't happen. And so we're tired of that same pattern, which is why I think people are so raw about that. But now, again, this is in 2020, and the recommendations are mostly neutered and meaningless. Next time we have the CIA taking orders from the president to conduct a coup, next time this happens, our recommendations are improve peer review of controversial assessments. So like have someone check their homework. Got it. Require political appointees to recuse themselves so political hacks aren't leading the investigation. Got it. Mandate that finished analysis citing substandard raw intelligence reports include a context footnote explaining all the factors, right? Whereas these recommendations should have been criminal referrals for all of the people involved. Now, most judgments on Russia's activity, writes the report, here's what the majority found. Most judgments from the intelligence community on Russia's activity in the U.S. election employed proper analytic tradecraft. So there were some reports about Russia doing things, and those were proper reports. And they were consistent with the observed Russian behaviors. Here's some of the judgments that were actually credible. 1, Putin ordered conventional and cyber influence operations, notably by leaking politically sensitive emails obtained from computer intrusions, right? So there's some involvement of Putin somewhere. And Putin's principal motivations in these operations were to undermine faith in the U.S. democratic process and to weaken what the Russians consider to be an inevitable Clinton presidency. Putin held back, as number 3, leaking some of the compromising material because he wanted to use it after the election when he thought Hillary was going to win. So actually, it would have served him if Hillary won because he's got a lot more compromise on her from all of her hacked emails. And so this was not actually something that he wanted Trump to win because he doesn't have the same compromise on Trump. Now, in contrast to the rest of the intelligence community, so everybody's going one way on this, right? Actually kind of thought that Hillary was going to win and was holding back, wasn't doing a lot, but did approve some things, but it was going to be delayed. But in contrast to the rest of the intelligence community, the judgment that Putin developed, quote, a clear preference for candidate Trump and aspired to help his chances of victory did not adhere to the tenets of the analytic standards. Okay, they just made it up. Everybody else followed the proper procedure. You do DUI blood analysis. You got to do it right. Okay, you can't just take the blood sample to your kitchen sink and sample it and say, oh, this guy's drunk. You got to follow the proper procedures. And if you screw one thing up, the defense attorneys have a field day with that. And they say the entire sample should be invalidated. Do it right next time. And so something similar is happening here. There's a proper procedure that you go through when you're analyzing the evidence, and they failed. Well, they didn't fail. They knew what they were doing. They were organizing it to attack the president. Now, the director of the CIA, Brennan, here's what they found. Ordered the post-election publication after the election. Like, oh, crap, Brennan. He wanted to publish 15 reports containing previously collected but unpublished intelligence, 3 of which were substandard. Okay, now this guy's just trolling through his closet. He's like, I just need some anything, whatever. Somebody's like, well, Trump said something that sounded Russian one time. He did? What'd he say? Well, I don't know. Oh, that's good enough. Write it down. Containing information that was unclear, uncertain origin, potentially biased, or totally implausible. And those became foundational sources for their judgments. He goes into the garbage and picks out something useful and makes it up. Show me the man, I'll show you the crime, just like Stalin. The ICA misrepresented these reports as reliable. They lied without mentioning their significant underlying flaws. It's just a fake report. Fraudulent. One scant, unclear, unverifiable fragment of a sentence from one of the substantiated reports, one scant, unclear fragment of a sentence constitutes the only classified information cited to suggest Putin, quote, aspired to help Trump win. It's totally meaningless, but they ran with that, right? Trump-Russia collusion. There's a whole song about it. Jake Tapper, before he was on the Biden's Amazing train, he was out there. Trump-Russia collusion. You know the song. The ICA ignored or selectively quoted reliable intelligence reports, just, cherry-picked what they wanted, and in some cases, undermined judgments that Putin sought to elect Trump. So they left out the stuff that actually said the opposite of the conclusion they wanted. Now, they also failed to consider plausible alternative explanations for Putin's intentions that they had actual reliable intelligence about, and when they could match it with observed Russian actions. And so the DCIA, so that's John Brennan, what he did is he picked 5 analysts to write the report. He rushed it through just like they did when they needed talking points for Joe Biden on the debate stage in order to publish 2 weeks before Trump was sworn in to come out and attack him. Hurried coordination and limited access to the draft reduced opportunities for the intelligence community to discover misquoting of sources, okay? Not even appropriately copying and pasting their fake reports. And other tradecraft errors. It's not an error. I mean, it's an error, but it's they could, I guess, call it incompetence, but we know that it's just feigned incompetence when in reality, it's intentional criminality. It's intentional maliciousness. So they continued. Here's some more detailed findings. This is the unredacted, fully sourced, limited access investigation report that was drafted and stored in a limited access vault at CIA headquarters, baby. We're looking at the good stuff today. Although the principal findings of this report are identical to the top secret downgraded version prepared for Congress, this is even more advanced than what Congress gets. And did they write this in Calibri? What font is this? This version contains significantly more detailed quotations from sensitive reports to include source descriptions from raw intelligence and extensive footnotes citing raw intelligence reports and interviews of intelligence community officers. And the names of the officers quoted in the main text were omitted, but here's what we found. The bulk of the intelligence community judgments were sound, and they did employ proper analytic tradecraft, right? A lot of it was great. It was good stuff. It was only after Trump won and they had to change everything that it became garbage and fake. The majority found most of these were pretty well reasoned, actually, consistent with observed observations. Russia's efforts to influence 16 represent the most recent expression of their desire to undermine U.S. liberal democratic order. Okay, we came to that conclusion. Russian intelligence services, acting on the orders of Putin, launched conventional and cyber influence operations, and notably by leaking politically sensitive emails that were obtained from computer intrusions during the 2016 elections. Now, Putin's principal motivations in these influence operations were to undermine, and it was a long-standing desire to undermine U.S. democracy, not to help Trump, and to weaken from the start what the Russians thought was going to be an inevitable Clinton presidency. So, in fact, Putin, they write specifically, this is intelligence community details that even Tom Cotton sounds like didn't get to see all at the time. Putin held back leaking some compromising material to use against Hillary for later. So I think by logical reasoning, you can say that Putin was helping Clinton. That little detail, it's like, wait a minute. Putin had bad information about Hillary that could have been devastating to her campaign, and he didn't release it because he wanted her in there. That would have been a nice little detail we could have known, back then. Now, the operation of officers at the CIA and the NSA who produced the raw intelligence cited in these reports showed great professionalism. Like, that's pretty good details. In fact, that is probably true, that he did have compromise on Hillary, because everybody does. Now, the CIA collection management officers did an excellent job of employing detailed context statements that spelled out evidentiary problems. And so some of the raw intelligence is pretty bad, could be bad. But what they did is the drafters did not accurately cite the most critical context statements, but original raw reports were nonetheless professionally prepared. All right, so it's all good. Nice job, everybody. But then there was significant failings when Trump won. Now, in contrast to the intelligence community's other judgments, and by the way, this is not Tulsi Gabbard writing this, okay? This is a 2020 report. So you can see what they're explaining here is one of these things is not like the others. One of these things just doesn't belong here. That's indicia of intent. They had an immediate reversal and they fell way below the standards in order to come to a conclusion that is just not supported in evidence. Now, in contrast to their other judgments, the sections that were addressing Putin's intentions did not observe professional criteria set forth in the other analytic standards. Now, these failures were serious enough to call into question judgments that allege that Putin developed a clear preference for candidate Trump. That's what they wrote. There is no evidence of that. And the failures were serious enough to question their judgment. Why did they make the decision? What about their judgment caused them to do that? Oh, they're partisan hacks. They're not interested in doing their jobs and being good stewards of American power. And they aspired to help his chances of victory, made up. And that Russian leaders never entirely abandoned hope for a defeat of Secretary Clinton, okay? Setting this whole thing up. This is unequivocal statements that they had to generate, and they're trying to tie it to fake evidence, as we'll see. Now, the ICA defined these as high confidence judgments based on a body of reporting from, quote, multiple sources. Now, here's the box, Putin's intentions. Here's what they said. They wrote, "We further assess Putin and the Russian government developed a clear preference for Trump. We have, quote, high confidence in these judgments," write the Brennan, Comey Clapper hacks. CIA and FBI also assess with high confidence that Putin and the Russian governments aspired to help Trump. No, they did not. They wanted Hillary to win so that they could attack her, saying that when possible, they wanted to discredit Secretary Clinton. and we assess that Russian leaders never abandoned hope for a defeat of Clinton. They wrote this. When it appeared that Clinton was likely to win, their influence began to focus more on undermining her future presidency, which is a careful way of saying that that's probably true, right? And that's why they wanted her to win, is because they had the compromise, which they didn't tell us about. Now, the judgments on Putin's intentions that they just shoved in there failed the standards, okay? You wouldn't serve that egg to anybody, okay? It's not done. You have to cook it more. It's like a goopy mess, so continue to cook it. It's not done yet. The standards were dropped. And here, the question, of course, is why? They failed to adhere to it because it was intentional. They wanted this to be crap. Now, here's what they failed to do. Properly describe quality and the credibility of the sources, so they didn't even make the sandwich properly according to the process. Properly express and explain uncertainties associated with major analytic judgments. So the report was just failing to even, check the rubric. Like, you might write an English paper and the professor might agree with you, but if you have the proper introductory phrase and you have the 3 bullet points and you have your conclusion, and then, oh, you got that, you got that, you got that, you got that, so you get an A, okay? You did the bare minimum. They didn't even do that. Base confidence assessments on the quantity and quality source of material, no analysis. Be informed by all relevant information available. Failed that one. They neglected all of the other intelligence that provided an alternative story. They didn't consider any alternative perspectives or contrary information in the report. And they failed to be independent of political considerations because the whole thing was political. So all of that, right? They failed. You didn't do this. You didn't do this. You didn't do this. You didn't do this. And you're the best in the whole thing. So you just rush this out because you needed a narrative to shove down everyone's throats. Now, despite the significant tradecraft failures, the assessment demonstrated awareness that the standards in a section, in other words, they knew what they were doing and they ignored it. They say a critical part of this is to make sure we're doing a good job and explore alternatives and all the things. But unlike the other routine analysis, this report was a high-profile product ordered by the president. Oh. Unlike routine analysis, the report was a high-profile product ordered by Obama, according to the authors of this report. Directed by senior intelligence community agency heads and created by just 5 CIA analysts using one principal drafter. That's all. It was a coup by those people right there, defined. Production of this report was subject to unusual directives from the president and senior political appointees, and particularly the director of the CIA. The draft was not properly coordinated within the CIA or the intelligence community, ensuring it would be published without any significant challenges to its conclusions. That paragraph is epic. The tradecraft failures identified in this review are limited to sections of the report addressing Putin's intentions only, because they did not follow standard procedures for this. They should not be seen as an indication of any other systemic problems with the rest of our agencies. Here's more. The intelligence community assessment failed to acknowledge that the report was based on garbage information. The rules say you have to have good info. Now, accurate citation of raw intelligence reporting is critical to explaining to the reader whether the evidence is reliable. But the intelligence community disregarded these fundamental sections. They didn't even include those in the rubric. And they now claim that Putin intended for Trump to win without any supporting evidence. Man, Miss Thompson in 3rd grade would scold you for that. You know better than that. Put that in your essay, little Robbie. And if you don't get good marks. Now, in this case, the reason you leave those things out is because you don't want to comment on them, because they would be devastating to your final conclusion. Key classified reports cited by the intelligence community in support of judgments that Putin developed a clear preference and aspired to help Trump contained flaws in terms of clarity or reliability. They just kind of made it sound like something it wasn't. The report omitted or obscured. Wow, look at that. Obscured. That's like intentional obstruction. You might omit it because you don't think it's relevant. It's kind of well, we omitted that. It's not relevant. Comey said that. We didn't really think that Debbie Wasserman Schultz was doing anything bad when she was saying that Hillary was deleting and shredding emails like with a cloth. Didn't care about that. It's not relevant. She's just donor. It's locker room talk. He's just talking to donors. Here, omitted, not relevant, but obscured. That's a whole different thing. You're like, okay, we're not going to include this, but we're also going to just shove this in that drawer over here where no one looks. Saying that information was also just obscured from the context statements, right? That's more maliciousness and intentionality there. We're just checking the boxes on these things. That the CIA's Directorate of Operations had properly added to raw human source reports, and thus they failed to warn the reader of the significant flaws in their sources. Continuing explaining that in response to the direction from the President Obama, the direction of the President Obama to make all information available, CIA officers said that the director of the CIA, John Brennan, Obama's hatchet man, ordered the publication in early December 2016 of 15 new or revised CIA human intelligence reports containing prior information on the Russians that they decided not to publish because they were terrible. They had, for various reasons, having to do with tradecraft standards. He's like, you remember those blog posts that you guys scraped off that one dude's account? Can you file those? Like that guy? Ryan Ruth? Or something? You know? Some maniac, you want his, you just submit those. It sounds like a crazy Russian person, so just whatever, yeah, submit those. Now, most of the 15 were unremarkable, but they needed something. But 3 contained flawed information. And these 3 became the foundational sources that the Brennan-Obama coup co-conspiracy cabal cited to claim that Putin wanted Trump to win. So John Brennan ordered the CIA to go generate some reports that were terrible, 15 of them unremarkable, but the 3 that were literally flawed, that were flawed information, it's not right. They took it and added it as fact. Senior CIA officers said some of the information in these reports had been judged to have not met various long-standing intelligence community standards for publication, and that is why they had not been published in the first place. They were terrible. 2 sensitive reports were not published on the CIA's director's orders, okay? Brennan says, actually, don't publish those. Then maybe he said, actually go ahead and publish those. CIA officers also said that John Brennan personally directed that 2 of the most important reports not be formally disseminated when he first learned of them, ostensibly because they were too sensitive to even create printed copies. We were unable to obtain a convincing explanation, however, for why Brennan did this, since the CIA has a special reporting channel, it's called the Blank Series, whereby sensitive reports are restricted to only the president or as small as by name group as desired. So Brennan, you could still distribute the reports, like, you're the CIA. Is this line secure? Yeah, go. Okay, right? Yeah, so what are you doing? So just send it by secure. So you don't have to say we can't send it because it's too sensitive to send. Experienced CIA officers noted that publishing a written report creates a formal record copy. That's the problem. Vetted by expert collection management officers and linguists. If you write it down, they look at it. Unclear or poorly sourced information would normally be removed or else explained in the context statement. Now, reading a published report ensures consistent message to all recipients, and by briefing the information orally, however, Brennan could have tailored his message to different officials, and he's completely unconstrained by a consistent record copy. He's not an idiot. He can tell everybody whatever he wants. It's like the game of telephone. We played this when we were 4 years old or whatever. Bobby sells seashells by the seashore. By the time it gets all the way down to Molly down there, she's like, Hunter Biden snorts crack. You're like, oh, okay, well, it's not what we said, but okay, it's true. The 3 reports became the foundational sources that led to their judgments against Trump. Now, on scant, clear, and unverifiable information, they relied on a fragment of a sentence, these maniacs, from a single human intelligence report published under Brennan's order, and that was the only classified information that they cited, okay? Totally just terrible. The ICA did not cite any report where Putin directly indicated helping Trump win was the objective, because there wasn't one. That judgment rested on a questionable interpretation of one unclear fragment of a sentence. Here it is. The unclear fragment is shown in bold. Is part of a sentence in a something that reads this, something redacted. So it's probably like someone said this to someone in an email from this source to this source. Putin had made this decision to leak the DNC emails after he had come to believe that the Democratic nominee had better odds of winning the election, and that Trump, whose victory Putin was counting on, most likely would not be able to pull off a convincing victory. Putin was counting on. Does that sound like Putin is supporting Trump rather than just maybe even wishing, kind of like hopeful thinking, like, well, it's not going to win. He's not going to win, but that would be better than Hillary. And so we're actually going to help Hillary, win because we've got compromise on her that we can use. Like, everybody thought she was going to win, remember? It was like 96% to 0. It was a total anomaly. It was a wild night. It was crazy. A senior operations officer said of the fragment, "We don't know what was meant by that." Exactly right? 5 people read it 5 ways, as we just read there. What does that mean exactly? Now, the significance of this fragment to the intelligence community is that Putin, quote, aspired. So they, just like the game of telephone, they said that Putin was counting on, whatever that means. And we don't know who said this. Was this Russian translation? Who translated it? Whatever. Where's the source? How would he know? All these questions. But they turned that into Putin was actively aspiring to help Hillary. Now, if you're somebody who's just thinking tactically, right? She did not win, obviously, but he was thinking she was going to. So he's not going to go out there and, like, she was inevitable. Everybody thought that, except, some of us. But anyway, we're hopeful. But you get the point. He could hold back, and when she wins, unleash the floodgates on everything he's got and have way more damage in the aftermath if he thinks she's inevitable. Now, the significance of this fragment cannot be overstated. Okay, they took that and they ran. The major high confidence judgment of this report rests on one opinion about a text fragment with uncertain meaning that may be a garble, don't even know, and for which it is not clear how it was even obtained. Okay. This text, which would not have been published without Brennan's orders, we would have never seen it, is cited using only one interpretation of its meaning and without considering alternative interpretations, because they wanted one interpretation to matter. Continuing, saying the report containing the fragment where it came from did not directly say or imply even that Putin developed a preference for Trump. It wasn't even in there. Nor did it say that Putin ordered his intelligence services to assist Trump's chances of victory. In fact, the report presented only one interpretation of the unclear fragment, and they do so without following the proper reports and the guidelines. In fact, you have to properly distinguish when you're incorporating these things about assumptions and judgments, and you got to put a bunch of caveats in there. You can't say it's fact without also offering alternative assessments. That's the job. Now, this intelligence, though, does not address the source's motivations. They should have addressed that, right? If you're going to fill out the rubric for your intelligence report, John, you got to include source motivations in your analysis. But they didn't do that, which were part driven, they say, by a strong dislike for Putin and his regime. And the source also had an anti-Trump bias. You're kidding me. According to CIA officers. So they go to somebody like Putin supporting Trump from somebody who hates Trump. John Brennan takes it. He's like, yes, sounds pretty good to me. The report's judgment on Putin's thoughts about helping Trump does not stand if the single interpretation of the fragment is wrong. So the conclusion is based on on one leg of the stool. Because there is no other intelligence that corroborates it, and in any case, any other intelligence that is viable, perhaps more likely, alternative interpretations of the fragment actually exist. And none of the confirmed Russian activities Leaks, public statements, social media messaging, traditional propaganda corroborate this interpretation of the fragment. Nothing else supports it because these activities were all consistent with Putin's objectives, which was to undermine faith in democracy. There was no love of Trump's fate until they had to make it up. But what happened was John Brennan led this. In fact, he overruled John Brennan, more indicia of criminality and sedition, overruled CIA professionals to publish and cite the ambiguous fragment, saying, here, experienced CIA officers responsible for the reporting, they evaluate the raw intelligence. They say, who is this guy? Where did he come from? What did he say? And they ensure that human intelligence reporting meets the threshold for publication. They initially omitted the confusing fragment from the first version of the report. They said, no, that we can't vet that. We can't validate any of that. So we're going to leave it out. But then John Brennan came in, overruled them, said, actually, I know better than you. I want that fragment in there because we want to cite it in our scam. A senior CIA operations officer described concerns about that, saying it was unclear reporting, saying the only evidence for this significant judgment, kind of a big thing to say, that Putin aspired to help Trump. There's no evidence in there. The officer explained that while most of the ICA was well done, ideally, they should have eliminated the political judgment because there's no basis for that, because the fragment lacked the clarity that was needed, overruled other people who had proper standards in the CIA. That same officer said that together with another senior colleague, two officers told John Brennan, we don't have direct information that Putin wanted to get Trump elected. Okay. Tulsi Gabbard didn't write this report. This was delivered to Congress and they did nothing about it and said, well, it's all valid to us. And therefore, the judgment that Putin was counting on Trump's victory should have been removed. They said that. We've got no evidence. They said, shut your mouths. We're publishing it. Now, the text failed to acknowledge the ambiguity of the fragment. Didn't express any of the uncertainties. Okay, the rubric was bad. They used an abbreviated description of the source without further mention of the problem, and it misleads the reader. It fails to explain the misgivings of the CIA professionals who got the information about the lack of clarity on the fragment. So the guy who gave you the document is like, this is terrible, but here it is. And they didn't even use it. And possibility of other interpretations. And the fragment doesn't even actually say anything about Putin aspired to help Trump. We don't even know what the information was even acquired. The ICA text said, we assess the influence campaign aspired to help Trump's chances of victory when possible. They say it's supported by using an abbreviated source description, and the established source with secondhand access reported that Putin was counting on the president's victory. But this citation leaves out clear and important context flags from the raw intelligence report. In fact, the context warning says the identified subsource of paragraphs 2 and 3 had authoritative insight into this redacted, but the exact circumstances which the subsource obtained the information on Putin's plans were not explicitly clear. And so more redactions there. Now, the context statements opens up a number of possibilities affecting the reliability of that. And the Brennan and Obama report failed to clarify. The source did not say that Putin preferred Trump or that he wanted to help him win. Didn't say it. It's not known how the subsource even got the information, and thus whether the fragment reflected the opinion of Putin's inner thoughts, Putin's actual statements, or some third person's statement. The key sentence of the fragment that was used to make the judgment was actually ambiguous. Okay, counting on could equate to expected instead of preferred. They just substituted the better word for their coup, and that without further clarification, you can't make it say something that it doesn't say. Now, someone else says that they did not mention that redacted. It was not possible to have the established source ask the subsource what they meant. So no further investigation was possible. But John Brennan and the Obama coosters, they failed to acknowledge an alternative interpretation of this. The fragment could be read to say that Putin counted on a Trump victory even at the convention. Okay, it could not even have been referring to the election. He was referring to the Republican convention, which was 2 weeks away at the time of the Putin WikiLeaks decision. So maybe not even the presidency. The fragment referred to decisions made by Putin in early July when the convention outcome was still uncertain. So maybe he counted on a Trump victory for the nomination. Got it? And the fragment thus may have reflected a subsource talking about that, not even have anything to do with the election. Now, this alternative interpretation would have undermined them, and they didn't even mention it. And they also mischaracterized this intelligence as high confidence, okay? High confidence means something. Usually, it generally indicates that judgments are based on high-quality information from multiple sources. It's fraudulent. They can't have high confidence because it came from one entity. The NSA justification for not signing on to high confidence highlights the weakness of the evidence for this major judgment, explaining that the NSA has moderate confidence, we've got a limited source space, lack of corroborating evidence, and the possibility for alternative judgments. And the director of the NSA also testified to this reporter, this team of people, boils down to human intelligence source that did not have direct evidence. And so I didn't find the level of corroboration that led me to believe high confidence, and I didn't see multiple sources there because there weren't. Now, the report then includes a scope and sourcing statement describing the reliability of their human intelligence. And they say, we make judgments based on the reporting of an established clandestine source with secondhand access through identified subsources. They wrote, the source is well established, and other examples of this reporting have been corroborated. And they say the established source with secondhand access provided us our only specific information on Putin's order to pass the WikiLeaks material because of efforts planned Russian operations because of Putin's views of Clinton. So no real conclusion on which way he was going in that segment. But although the ICA correctly describes the reporting history, it doesn't explain that information from this source that he passes on from a subsource is only as good as the subsource. Okay, so we don't know about the subsource. It's like going through somebody they know, but from somebody they don't. When a source sends a report that is unclear, the utility of that information is limited until it can be clarified or corroborated. And they didn't do it. It was not possible to do it. They couldn't even clarify the meaning of the report language or even identify how that info came to the subsource. Now, John Brennan ordered the publication of a second terrible report because he needed more. His page limit, he hadn't hit his page limit yet. He's like, man, we got to get this. We got to bump these numbers up. He's like, can we shrink the margins? Like, no, they know the margin is trick. He's like, oh, yeah, I'm sorry, I'm a CIA agent. This information was both unverified and implausible, saying that he ordered another fake report to be published from something that was terrible. It was only published because John Brennan ordered it after the election on December 16th, 2016. And remember, they didn't want to undermine, like, as long as Hillary won, Russia can do whatever they want. Do whatever you want. Have, Hillary here have some uranium. We don't care. As long as she wins. But when she didn't win, then Brennan's like, okay, bring out that report, bring out that report. Anything that we can use to undermine this, we'll just publish it, even if it's not reliable. And was subsequently used without any caveats. Why'd he pull it out of his booty and shove it in this analysis? And the source to source the first bullet of evidence saying that Trump developed a clear preference. They say what they said. The first bullet of evidence on Putin's, quote, clear preference for Trump is this. As early as February, Brennan and his crew wrote this. As early as February 16, right before the election in November, a Russian political expert possessed a plan that recommended engagement with Trump's team because of the prospects for improved U.S.-Russian relations, according to reporting from something in the government. And that's based on some other report, which was obviously terrible. Now, the bullet text is alarming, implying the existence of a Russian plan for engagement with the Trump campaign that most readers would see as strong evidence that Putin is showing a clear preference for Trump. But the report omits critical report context, which, if it was available to the reader at the time, it would show the report to be implausible, if not ridiculous, and missing so many key details as to be unusable. CIA operation officers declined to publish the report when it was originally acquired because they considered it odd and it lacked authority. It was only disseminated after Hillary lost on Brennan's post-election, quote, full review order by Obama to put out previously unpublished information. And experienced CIA officers said that it would not have met the threshold for dissemination otherwise. Brennan overruled it because he needed to paper the file. The ICA fails to clarify that the plan was just an email with no date, no identified sender, no clear recipient, and no classification. The CIA could not vouch for the ultimate source's vetting, validation, or access, so it's just a document someone wrote. Station officers were also unable to further obtain clarification of this report from this service, and they don't give us any context, right? What the raw intelligence says, second report's context warning. The CIA can neither independently vouch for this or this, vetting, or the validation of the ultimate source, nor the ultimate source's access to the reported info. The document contains no classification. The document did not carry specific data or identify the originator, redacted. Now, what they're doing is obscuring the implausibility of the report. By vaguely referring to a plan without describing their details, they're leaving out the ridiculousness of this. The details were important because they were so peculiar as to likely cause readers to question the entire report. The ICA also obscured the source of the report, which had an anti-Trump bias, which they specifically note, which they should note, describing factors affecting motivation and possible bias. Now, what they call a Russian plan for engagement with Trump was actually an anonymous email proposal to place redacted something on Trump's, quote, election team in order to formulate a mutually acceptable agenda between Trump and Putin. So we don't know what it was, and we don't know whether that was illegal or anything, right? There is no explanation of how this could be done or why Trump would want a well-known pro-Kremlin official on his campaign team to ensure the media furor that would likely result. Okay, so it's not like some engagement. There's like, well, we think we could have a nice relationship with you, and there's some sort of, agreement like on a business deal or something, and they want to communicate. I think that's probably normal, right? And not criminal. But if it's like we want to put a pro-Kremlin official on there and they think Trump's going to do that, that sounds fantastical. The ICA bullet obscured the source. Now, I know you can't do that with Russia. Like, Russia is the only country that you can't do that with. You can interface with all these other countries because they're friendly, but Russia is like illegal. I can't talk to anybody over there. So the ICA bullet obscured the source as a blank service. That's not the service. It actually came from the blank service. Oh, it came from some legitimate entity. No, it didn't. It came from these people. Had the bullet clarified that it came from them, some readers might have known of the blank anti-Trump bias at the time because they hated him, which would further undermine their judgment. And so there was no security justification for obscuring the identity of the maybe news service, as the ICA was written for the president, who is cleared for everything. It's some other intelligence service, it sounds like. And so the ICA made no mention of Kyiv, Ukraine, the Ukrainians, and their objections to candidate Trump. The Ukrainian ambassador in Washington took the unusual step for a serving ambassador during the campaign of publishing an open letter in the U.S. publication saying, Trump's comment sends the wrong message to the world. Ukrainians were going nuts back then anyways. The letter expressed Kyiv's fears that Trump was misinformed, and if elected, he might hurt Ukraine by improving U.S. relations with Russia, right? So they had to set Russia up as an enemy because Ukrainian oligarchs didn't want Trump to mend fences with them and stop the insanity that is bringing us to the brink of a nuclear war. How dare you? So no, then they wanted to elect Hillary and Biden, which then caused Ukraine to get invaded. Good job, Zelensky. Now, and good job, neocon foreign policy. Over most of my lifetime, constantly saying that the United States and NATO need to take over everything and that Russia's the enemy of the world. Now, DCIA ordered the publication of a third substandard report because the first two are not enough. And to support the topic sentence, Putin, his advisors, and the Russian government developed a clear preference for Trump. They also released something else. They wrote in their crap report, the established source with secondhand access noted that several members of Putin's inner circle strongly preferred Republican over Democrats because they judged that Republicans had historically been less focused on democracy and human rights. What? They described the information in terms that most readers would view as clear evidence that Putin had a preference for Trump, but they omitted other details. As with the other other substandard reports, remember there were 3 that they based most of their foundations on, CIA professionals originally declined to publish this information because it was terrible. The information was acquired from a source via a secondhand source in this country in 2016, probably Ukraine. The ultimate source of the information is unknown, probably Ukrainian. While the established source received it from an identified subsource, the ultimate source of the information is not known. Did the Ukrainians seed this whole thing? It is unclear or help seed in the operation, because if that is the case, then that gets us to treason pretty quickly. Now we've got a foreign adversary, okay? It's not Obama, Brennan, and Comey and the rest of them. If they have the Ukrainian sources funneling this to intelligence agents, and then the intelligence agents subsume that and incorporate that into their intelligence reports, how is that not a foreign enemy to the United States? Now, it's unclear if the original source actually had access to Putin, or if this was a subsource of personal opinions or what, but they published it anyways. And their context memo was also terrible. In fact, the phrase strongly preferred Republicans does not appear in the raw intelligence report at all. The known subsource said that historically the Kremlin has found it easier to reach out to Republicans. And this was because Republicans were less concerned about human rights. Democrats care about Ukrainians and human rights, and Republicans are just maniacs. Got it. The ICA did not even take the basic analytic step, however, of comparing the plausibility of this subsource claims with the documented policies of all past 3 Republican presidents, all of whom feature democracy and human rights as cornerstones of their foreign policies. It brings to mind Reagan's famous quote, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall. And Bush talking about the axis of evil. Didn't mention any of that. Now, this information does not appear in the context statement, and it should have. But we continue. And all of it leaves the reader unaware of the weakness of the evidence cited to support the major judgment on Putin's intentions, which were all fake. Now, the ICA also failed to address the existence of contradictory reports. Even part of their own classified text, based on reliable reporting, contradicts the information contained in the third report. This raised further questions about why, contrary to the standards in writing spy reports, the third report was cited as evidence. Why'd they do that? Some senior Russian officials worried a Trump administration would bring hardline national security advisors, or that a Republican-controlled Congress would not support measures that would be beneficial to Russia. So redacted. And someone else cautioned about the risks to Russia of a Republican administration, noting that those who would hold positions in the Trump administration, should he win, will likely adhere to conservative anti-Russian positions. So why would they want Trump to win if this report is saying they're freaked of Trump? And they're also holding back against dumping on Hillary. They left that out. Now, additionally, actually not, they put it in their classified annex. Now, additionally, both the historical record and the source materials for their annex indicate that the strongly preferred Republicans' position that they made up glossed over details in the annex from reliable sources that contradict the very claim. In fact, there are no Russian plans to target any Democrat presidential candidate for active measures because any Democrat candidate is preferable to President Reagan, said somebody. Okay, we don't want another Republican in there. Despite unknown sourcing, reliable contrary evidence, and implausible claims, the then Director of National Intelligence, James Clapper, responding to a request to double-check the sourcing behind the judgment, responded in a letter to the committee that he still endorsed the judgment because he's part of the coup. He responded, more evidence of intent. Sounds like he didn't have his assistant write this one. I have reviewed the underlying source material myself, probably from Ukraine, and entirely concur in the judgment of the analysts, which I believe is consistent with standards of analytical tradecraft and objectivity. Womp, that's not what this report says. It says, in fact, the text is misleading, and it was drafted to suggest that some of the qualities of candidate Trump aligned with Putin's preferences. And they also claimed from the third report that it was corroborated by a liaison, but in following up every citation, none were corroborating the claims. They reported it was corroborated, claimed it was corroborated. It was not. It's fraud, man. Now, the report also used the third substandard report to claim that members of Putin's inner circle had compared Trump to other leaders with business interests. And that led to the aspirational endeavor of Putin. Now, the cited liaison reporting actually didn't mention Trump at all, so his name never came up. They just shoved it in there. And it was from 2014. Trump didn't even run yet. They didn't mention that. They cited SIG intelligence also didn't mention Trump, and it was nothing more than some stupid thing like this. The cited diplomatic report is a post-election overview of Moscow from the U.S. ambassador that references a media opinion item. So someone wrote some blog post that said Trump and Putin should work together like businessmen. And then the Koosters took it up as evidence of collusion. Ironically, the same embassy cable quotes others saying, "We don't feel any euphoria," citing a bipartisan anti-Russian consensus, which directly contradicts the ICA judgment that the Russians preferred Trump. The same embassy cable quotes that contradicts that they preferred Trump. Now, the ICA also excluded significant intelligence. They just left it out. They selectively omitted quotes from key reports that contradicted the judgments on Putin's intentions, while conversely, they included quotes from those same reports that supported the thesis. They are so dishonest, man. This was done multiple times to include citations to two foundational sources for the ICA, so they're only telling one half of the story. This cherry picking, exactly, of reports is an important indicator for evaluating tradecraft. So when they're reviewing your homework, they say, did you cherry pick anything? It's like an F. It's like a failure. Don't do that. By selectively quoting the report repeatedly, the authors both demonstrated their regard for the value of the source while simultaneously providing evidence of disregard for criteria on objectivity and consideration of contrary information from the same report. Totally dishonest. Now, the ICA selectively quoted a report as well. So they cherry pick the good stuff. They leave out the bad stuff. They were quoting things like the following. Missing from their report was significant intelligence that this happened. A longtime Putin confidant told a sensitive contact, told him this. Putin said he didn't care who won. Putin had often outlined the weaknesses of both of them. Putin asserted that Russia was strategically placed to outmaneuver either one. Now, Putin's ambivalence about the two candidates is also further supported, and that was omitted as well because it didn't serve their narrative. In fact, redacted. Putin's friend made no positive mention of Trump at all. Instead, it revealed his pessimism that neither Trump or Clinton would be able to fix this relationship. And although he indicated that there could be more opportunities to improve relations, he said he didn't have a preference for either candidate. Left that out. And reinforcing his ambivalence was another statement saying they were going to gradually, noting that regardless of the outcome, they could gradually rid the bilateral dialogue of irritants. Interesting sentence. This theme was echoed by someone else, redacted, who noted that regardless of who wins, Russia will be able to begin a fresh dialogue with whoever wins. A Russian someone else also said that Russia was actually planning for Clinton victory. They knew where she stood, despite the media stories. They knew that they could work with her. Yeah, I mean, they gave him a bunch of uranium, I remember. But none of that was reported. And so a preoccupation of Russian officials and analysts was that neither Trump or Clinton would respect Russia, and it doesn't matter, regardless of party affiliations. Now, they also omitted reliable evidence that Putin's advisors saw significant downsides to the Trump presidency. If he wins, this is not going to be good for us. They were talking a lot about that. So that would support the idea that they'd want Hillary to win. The significance of that omission becomes apparent when reading the judgment of what Russian officials thought, which they said pushed for a clear preference for Trump, which is not true because that's what they wrote. Judgment that was directly contradicted by raw reports cited by the intelligence community as Russian views. They said, Well, to support this judgment, Putin and his advisors developed a clear preference for Trump. Liars. In late so-and-so, someone prepared an analysis for Russia's senior-most American experts, and he said that Putin was talking positively about Trump's business capabilities and that the presence of advisors viewed that as positive towards Russia's interest. And that was their basis for Putin supported Trump. Now, at a June 2016 Moscow conference, Putin and two prominent Russian experts, head of U.S. Canada, this guy and some other guy, gave speeches about this. And instead, they focused on the pros of the Russian attitudes towards Trump. And they were using Putin's speeches to kind of paper the file. But by omitting the below evidence, they denied the reader access to significant intelligence judgments, saying that Trump would probably be anti-Russian and that it would be a dead end in Congress and that Russian leaders took exception to, quote, having a favorable view of Trump. Like, no, we don't. They noted that Putin said, apparently, Trump is unlikely to be able to take steps to correct relations. So why would they want him if it's going to continue to be a problem? And we continue. They write, voluminous and likely relevant evidence was also excluded from information. They said that we're in possession of additional cyber-enabled collection and exfiltrated information from U.S. government. To date, we have not reviewed this data. Okay, so they've got a bunch of other evidence. The intelligence consisted of cyber data exfiltrated by the Russians from computer systems at these locations, including political groups and think tanks. But we don't know why this evidence was not reviewed. They didn't tell us. Probably like those thumb drives we talked about yesterday. A senior FBI analyst told investigators that there were many victims in these Russian hacks and that a lot of this should have been shared because it might have clarified the scope of Moscow, but they probably didn't want to look into it because it wouldn't have served them. Instead, John Brennan had to go make it up. The analyst explained that the Obama administration denied the intelligence drafters access to this intelligence on grounds of executive or congressional privilege. So like a lot of the leaked emails, Obama and the Hillary people are saying you can't look at them. And if they did, they'd see some more problems that probably would show that Russia would have a much better time with Hillary than Trump. They also disregarded Russian behavior. In fact, the GRU warned Putin in early September that Trump would lose the election and without the intervention of remarkable derogatory information on Clinton. Okay, so unless you nuke Clinton now, Trump's going to lose. So Putin had an opportunity. As the election entered the decisive final stages, Putin possessed proven low-risk cutout platforms for leaking documents. He could have leaked it via DC Leaks, WikiLeaks, Guccifer 2.0. They had an arsenal of material on Clinton. The SVR held that particularly damaging information that would have created greater scandals than material leaked already by the GRU was not leaked. CIA analysts confirmed that Moscow was receiving reports of U.S. election polling. They knew what was going on. Clinton had a strong lead. It gradually started to fall. The lowest point came 5 days before the election. Her lead was down to just 1.3. During those decisive final weeks, new scandals might have been expected to take a good chance of sinking her. Here were the polls. Remember that? Look at that. Clinton, 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 Clinton. Didn't work out. Putin's decision not to leak additional information as the polls narrowed undermines the claim that he ever tried or aspired to help Trump. If he wanted to do that, he could have just hit Hillary, and he didn't. Now, Putin's decision to stop leaking is consistent with alternative explanations that were omitted by the intelligence community that Putin didn't care who won. He saw weaknesses for Russia with both candidates. But the intelligence report glossed over more significant material, including the fact that Putin was holding this back. They said Moscow had additional information that it could have used based on these reports, but we assessed that Moscow refrained from this because it could have taken to effect this. We judged that they could have disclosed additional material and just kind of skip over it. They say their generic description, just like Putin had some additional stuff but held that back, makes the reader unaware of the significant information. Okay, there's a lot. They had the goods on her. And it violates directives, saying that what was already out was far less damaging than anything that Putin has that he could have leaked, because it's way more powerful if she wins. Now, as of September 16, the Russian Foreign Intelligence Service had Democratic National Committee information that Obama and party leaders found the state of Secretary Clinton's health to be extraordinarily alarming and felt it could have serious negative impact on her election prospects. Russians knew Hillary was a walking sack of potatoes, and they threw her into the side of a van like a slab of beef. They felt that it could have serious negative impact on her election prospects. Her health information was being kept in the strictest secrecy, and even close advisors were not being fully informed. The Russians knew that. We all saw it on September 11th when they threw her in the van and then brought out the body double. The SVR possessed DNC communications that Clinton was suffering from intensified psycho-emotional problems, including uncontrolled fits of anger, aggression, and cheerfulness. And we saw her. Man, she was getting so mad. Basket of deplorables and all the things. Clinton was placed on a daily regimen of, quote, heavy tranquilizers, and while afraid of losing, she remained obsessed with a thirst for power. She was going nuts, and we remember that. She's like, I will not have 50 points. Because your face right now, you look like you're psycho. The SVR also had information that Clinton suffered from type 2 diabetes, ischemic heart disease, deep vein thrombosis, and chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. Oh, gosh. The SVR possessed a campaign email discussing a plan approved by Hillary to link Putin and Russian hackers to Trump. Okay, so all her emails leaked because of her security failures and her gross incompetence and her criminal negligence. And so they say, well, let's just make it that Trump did it with the Russians. How about that? So they want to distract, an email says, they want to distract the American public from the Clinton email server scandal. They blame the Russians in a fake intelligence op, use the intelligence agencies to do it, and the media bought it and ran with it. The Russian Federal Security Service in August had details of secret meetings with multiple named U.S. religious organizations in which U.S. State Department representatives offered, in exchange for supporting Hillary Clinton, significant increases in financing from the department funds and the patronage of state in dealing with post-Soviet countries like Ukraine. FBI Director James Comey testified to the committee that in August, the SVR DNC emails, this is 2016, had the head of the DNC was telling people that former Attorney General Loretta Lynch was working to control me and keep a named member of the Clinton campaign informed on what the FBI was doing in the Clinton email investigation. That was Debbie Wasserman Schultz, remember? The report also had information that the DNC leadership and Clinton's foreign policy advisors had heard that U.S. allies in London and Berlin and Rome were not optimistic about a Clinton presidency. They had expressed notes of doubt, of fear about her ability to perform her job as heads of state. Why do they keep trying to elect invalid people who can't even function in the Democrat Party? They're just placeholders. Even Hillary was gone. People say she can't do her job. She can't even do her job as a Secretary of State. Russian Federal Security Service published a report in early September quoting European government experts saying that Clinton was building her lead in battleground states and Trump only had minimal chances of winning, and unless he was able to take advantage of more revelations and growing scandals. The text of the Russian intelligence services, they were aware of candidate Clinton's vulnerability about ethical issues, which, if highlighted, and they could have had a lot of value in leaking the secret meetings about State Department patronage and more. They didn't. The CIA redacted source details of this report, however, so it's difficult to assess the value of this intelligence. And it's not clear if this went to Putin or his staff, and they didn't even quote the report, but they continue. Now, Comey also testified that the DNC emails, which the head of the DNC was telling people that they were working together, was not a big deal. Remember, they had expressed notes of doubt regarding her ability to perform and do her job. Now, the SVR also said that in 2016, that it had information taken from a U.S. think tank that a high-ranking DNC official was putting political pressure on the FBI. In March, the SVR had intercepted discussions between a high-ranking DNC official and a U.S. government NGO, indicating that a Clinton staffer was receiving updates on the FBI's Clinton email investigation from a high-ranking DOJ official. Who was it? Loretta Lynch? It is difficult to justify the judgment that Putin aspired to help Trump by discrediting Clinton, given that in the closing weeks, when the devastating leaks could have happened, Putin didn't do it. And so at a minimum, they should have identified contrary evidence and addressed it. They didn't do it. And so now it's been distorted. Now, while the report did not address the significant strategic implications of what was held back, it does speculate on the motives to explain Putin's decision to stop leaking things. And he goes through with more speculation. But it doesn't even make sense, given that the media had already reported on Russian intrusions. They say, well, maybe he didn't leak it because then we could have secured our servers. Like, we already had everything in the servers. That's a pretty dumb reason. And you didn't even explain that. Their access was already blown, okay? Like, they already got everything. The cybersecurity company, CrowdStrike, has already done an analysis. All that was closed. And so the report pointed out politically sensitive decisions to leak or not were made by Putin personally. So it still would have been his call, regardless of speculation, on what to do. And he didn't release anything. His strategic priorities would have trumped any tactical concerns about access, right? So in other words, even if his access was cut off, he would have released what he had already. They didn't explain any Russian leaks to damage Trump. How, if the Russians wanted to help Hillary or hurt Hillary, why were they hurting Trump? There were emails that were embarrassing to Trump. In fact, they were highly critical of his character. The GRU associates at DCLeaks.com leaked emails belonging to Colin Powell, former Republican Secretary of State under Bush. Powell attacked the character of Trump. Of course he did. He said Donald Trump's a national disgrace and an international pariah. All his lies and nonsense just pile. Okay, yeah, why don't you take us back to Iraq there, Colin? And Trump is taking on water. He doesn't even have a GOP philosophy set, and the Bush people got obliterated. These leaks were contrary, and they didn't even mention that. If Putin wanted Trump to win, it would seem logical that he would not have leaked anti-Trump material. But he did. And they didn't address that. They also stopped with simply stating that this occurred, right? That additional compromises of other figures were happening. But they failed to consider that Moscow likely had substantially fewer documents available on Trump. Clinton was a high-profile person. Trump's staff was smaller. Clinton was likely to be high priority for Russia. She had extensive overseas travel. Comey even stated that she had careless security practices. So that's why they were all over her. We know that Putin held back significant material on her. He had a lot more material, and he didn't use it. Why? Now, they misrepresented the documents and Putin's intentions. Significant reports cited in support of Putin's intentions were not quoted accurately, which changed it. They were not even quoted in context, or they were selectively quoted to omit evidence that undermined the major judgments. Okay, we're now at page 23 of this, and it just keeps going. So how can this report just be, right, page after page? How can all of this just be bad craftsmanship, and they're just, not good intelligence analysts? This is evidence bit after bit about how this was engineered to leave out the key materials to engineer a conclusion. This is so damning. It's like this should have been a referral back then. A key Russian political assessment was incorrectly cited as supporting their judgment, and it was fake. They falsely cited an analysis of U.S. elections by Russian experts as evidence of Putin's intentions. But if you look at the raw intelligence, the report was not only badly misquoted, it provided additional evidence that Putin didn't care whether Trump won. It was the opposite of their judgment that it was alleged to support. And the report revealed a bunch of information that was obtained from resources, and it points out that there were other sensitive decisions, but the report actually undermines their judgment that Putin aspired to help Trump win. Said he never abandoned hope for defeating Clinton was another statement they used. The report demonstrated that Putin's intelligence analysts warned him that candidate Trump was likely to lose without remarkably compromising material. We're familiar with a lot of that, kind of the same story. Now, they included a 2-page summary of a series of anti-Trump political opposition research reports, which have become known as the Dossier, the Steele Dossier. In it, they misrepresented the Steele Dossier. Man, good section here. The ICA included a 2-page summary of a series of the anti-Trump political opposition research reports, the Steele Dossier, that was produced on behalf of the Democratic Party and the Clinton campaign by British intelligence, more treasonous involvement by foreigners. The dossier's most significant claims that Russia launched cyber activities to leak political emails were little more than a regurgitation of other stories that was already published in the media. It was all just, Washington Post crap. The dossier reports were either proven false or they were largely unsubstantiated. And these largely disparaged Trump's character, alleged collusion between him and his campaign and Russian intelligence, all in a criminal conspiracy to influence the election. The Steele Dossier, it became the basis of everything. It was fake. Contradicting public claims by Director Brennan that the dossier was not in any way incorporated into the report, the dossier was referenced in the main body of the text. So Brennan lied and further detailed in another 2-page annex. The report from Brennan and the Obama Coosters, 4th bullet of the evidence that Putin aspired to help Trump, another fake lie. In the CIA main body text, the key judgment, quote, "We assess the influence campaign aspired to help Trump's chances of victory," was followed by 4 bullet points of evidence. And for additional reporting on this, just go to the annex, Annex A. Guess what's in Annex A? Hillary Clinton's campaign propaganda. It was summarized the dossier's anti-Trump allegations, and it included some analysis that struggled to imply that some dossier findings might have actually been corroborated. It's like, well, it's kind of crap, but it still could be kind of good. The lead author of the intelligence report, a CIA officer, said that he drafted Annex A in coordination with the FBI, even though the FBI had provided the dossier information via memo from counterintelligence. So they devoted nearly 2 pages of this text to summarizing the dossier, and it misrepresented the significance of the report and the credibility of the report completely. It referred to the dossier as Russian plans and intentions, falsely implying to high-level U.S. policymakers that there was intelligence value for understanding how this worked. Now, even though the dossier was unclassified, the summary was only included in the highest classified version that was briefed to Obama and President-elect Trump and was seen by various national security officials and senior political appointees. So who knows if even Congress got that? It was omitted from both the top secret version that was released for Congress, they did not get it, and the unclassified public release version. So every time you hear these journos in the media, I think we'll hear Caitlin Collins, and we just heard the other guy from it, they'll say, well, Congress reviewed all the findings. That's right, because the CIA gave them redacted, limited information on which they can draw their conclusions. By relegating the dossier text only to the highest classified version, the authors were better able to shield the assessment from scrutiny, since access to the ICA version was so limited. So Congress couldn't even say. So the CIA says to Congress, hey, we've got this really serious report. Well, and it's referenced in the annex. They wrote it. Go look at the annex, Annex A. It's right there. For additional reporting, like this got delivered to Congress. Look at Annex A. Hey, cool. I'm Tom Cotton. I'm on the intelligence community. I'm Marco Rubio. I'm leading the Senate Intelligence Committee. Can I see it? No. CIA says you can't. You're just a senator. So then you proceed not reading Annex A. Had you read Annex A, you'd say, oh, that's the Steele dossier. Everyone knows that's fake. That was the basis for it. So then they write their reports and then they come tell us that it's all legitimate and it covers up. It's Congress taking the CIA's fake information, stamping it, saying we read their reports that are fake and we find that they did a good job. Great. The John Brennan, he rejected requests from other CIA professionals to keep this information out of there. Other actual CIA agents said, who have written for 2 presidents and other high-level officials, struggled to explain how we could have even put that in there without even identifying and vetting the primary sources and without explaining the political circumstances about how the report came about, created by the DNC. The resourcing errors involving the dossier violated so many directives that the text would normally not have passed first-line supervisor review at the CIA, the FBI, or the other intelligence agencies. I mean, that is so damning. That is like intentional gross negligence, criminal negligence. It's so bad that it wouldn't have passed anything. And it's a fraudulent document, right? It's fraud. It's not real. It's not even, it's just made up as an intelligence op. Now, moreover, the dossier made outlandish claims and was written in an amateurish conspiracy and political propaganda tone that invited skepticism, if not ridicule. 2 seniors, and they're saying, John, you can't reference this in your report to Congress. 2 senior CIA officers, one from Russia operations and the other from Russia, argued that that John Brennan, that the dossier should not be included at all. It failed to meet basic tradecraft standards, according to a senior officer who was there. The same officer said that Brennan refused to remove it. And when confronted with the dossier's many flaws, he said, John Brennan, quote, "Yes, but doesn't it ring true?" Sounds true, right? Hallmarks could happen. So what do you think? CIA veterans look at each other like, what? Veterans noted that they could not imagine any previous director ever allowing such a formal information in formal CIA product, much less one intended for 2 presidents, and then overriding the objections of senior experienced officers to do so. Okay, that is abuse of position. Not following the rules. Okay, he's abusing his office now. He's got standard procedures that are in place. And this is John Brennan. This is indicia of a conspiracy, and we'll say a seditious conspiracy along with others. He's got basic fundamental things that he's got to do, and he didn't do it. Then he's being objected to by his senior officials. He overrules them. He's abusing his power. Now, every CIA analyst and operations officer who was asked about the dossier took pains to emphasize they had nothing to do with the decision to include it in Annex A. Every officer there, every officer says no. Could not vouch for it, did not believe it should have been included, and some CIA officers blamed the FBI. Like, well, it's their fault. I don't know what to do. I'm going to ask the FBI. Explaining the analytic debate over the dossier, the FBI senior analyst said that the CIA didn't want it in that report because they were not comfortable with the sourcing. They put it in anyways. Echoing comments by CIA officers discussing the 3 substandard reports, the FBI senior analyst said that they were told by the FBI leadership that all materials, regardless of sourcing, was to be made available. Says we had to use whatever the CIA told us. That's the CIA. They said, you guys did it. They said, well, it was the right thing to do, and we were not able to verify it. Well, the senior analyst also addressed the poor sourcing. He says, well, we were trying to determine who the Steele subsources were. The question is, who are they? Are they credible? We need to qualify the path of how it even got to Steele. He made it up out of his butt. And he further noted that I'm not comfortable that we don't know how this got to Steele. Now, the analyst did not say that any FBI personnel objected to the inclusion in the CIA report. The words were carefully chosen, however, highlighting strong concerns over unverifiable sourcing of dossier reports and their chain of acquisition. The FBI would not allow any other analysts to be interviewed, and it would be interesting to meet with others about their views. FBI locks down. Now, the FBI assistant director in the counterintelligence division, and Cash has got a lot of documents too, Cash. Hopefully he's dropping those soon. The FBI assistant director and one of the senior officers acting on behalf of the director pushed to have the dossier woven throughout. But ultimately, it was the decision of what to do with the dossier was jointly made by Brennan and Comey, who overruled objections from CIA officers and agreed to reference it in the bullet points while hiding it in the appendix. Brennan and Comey right there, evidence. And they're not, you know, they're interviewing people. They said, no, they were the ones who decided. And talked to them and they said, yeah, we overruled all of the traditional protections and put it in. And they hid it. They buried it in the appendix. It would have been more ridiculous, actually, if they put it in there. The Steele dossier, you're referencing this? Everybody would have thought it was ridiculous. The decision by the two directors was confirmed by the FBI senior analyst who said it was debated for several days. Upper levels at the FBI, CIA, they decided to put it in. It was written by the director of the FBI and by a memo for the record written by FBI Director James Comey, in which he told White House officials, I thought it was very important that it be included. James Comey thought it was very important that Hillary Clinton's campaign propaganda be included in a coup attempt against the president. Indict him. The ICA ignored abundant evidence that Steele's alleged source did not even appear credible. They all just ignored it because it was useful. The dossier author claimed to have a network of sources with access to Putin. But at least as early as September, Steele was offering his dossier to dozens of reporters and was trying to take it to BuzzFeed and everything, right? Trying to create a scandal. If the reports from Steele's alleged source network were accurate, their publication in the media would have triggered a fierce counterintelligence investigation. And it didn't. That Steele deliberately exposed the dossier to the media suggests that he either knew the information to be fabricated or didn't care about his asset safety, possibly because his alleged network lacked any meaningful access to Putin, his inner circle, or genuine covert action plans. Like, if Putin thought that this guy had good info, they would have reacted. They didn't. Steele raised more red flags, ignored by the Brennan Coosters. When he delivered the dossier reports to the FBI using a circuitous route that bypassed intelligence authorities in London and appeared to get the material into official channels at the FBI while minimizing the prospect for scrutiny of his suspect source network. That's right. And that was Mark Elias and Michael Sussman. They contracted with Fusion GPS, who got the report, and then Sussman went over and tried to feed that to James Baker, the general counsel for the FBI. Mr. Steele, who resided in London, delivered his first reports July 16. He could have easily passed the reports to British intelligence or the CIA, but he exploited an old contact at the FBI, with whom he worked a long time before. He persuaded the agent, who was based in Rome, to fly to London to get the documents, fly the documents back to Rome on a commercial flight, and then pass them back to FBI headquarters, delivering the documents to Washington. And by the way, Sussman, was delivering other materials. I think the Steele dossier was ultimately back. Let's see where this goes. Delivering the documents to Washington via British intelligence or the American embassy in London would have been more convenient. The Rome-based FBI agent admitted that he had no intelligence training, nor did he have experience in working with foreign stuff. So he goes to Rome, gets an FBI agent there. But he had worked with Steele previously on an unrelated matter. The FBI agent also said he accepted the dossier reports from Steele without even giving basic source information or inquiring about validation. He said, I wasn't trained. The agent said he trusted Steele because he'd been helpful in the past and he seemed kind of professional. The agent also noted that he was not sure how to handle the reporting of this nature. Steele refused to be interviewed here, but as a former British intelligence officer, he would have balked at using official channels to transmit unsourced gossip. Doing so would have called into question their tradecraft judgment, and the sourcing failed to meet even basic tradecraft standards, and it was terrible. His unsubstantiated claims of having a network in Moscow appeared fanciful to a professional and even raised counterintelligence concerns that the dossier might be Russian disinfo. It's notoriously difficult to run sources out of Moscow. Steele was unable to demonstrate that he had them, and the tone and the content was dubious. It looked political, and it looked like it was denigrating Trump. The Rome-based FBI agent testified that he was contacted by senior Department of Justice official who had met with Steele that same month and had been speaking or texting with Steele. Who was that? The official's wife worked for the company, Fusion GPS, that contracted with Steele to produce the dossier. That was what was then fed up with Mark Elias. The official wanted to verify that the documents had been received by FBI headquarters and were being used by the FBI to look at Russia. So DOJ is now asking Fusion what the FBI is doing with their materials. So Steele was thus able to successfully exploit a previous relationship with the DOJ and the FBI to get this into official channels where they might carry an air of credibility that they wouldn't have had. Okay, if it goes from Steele to the New York Times, then they just say, oh, it's from Steele to the New York Times. But if it goes from the FBI to the New York Times, that's different. Indeed, when the dossier summary was sent to CIA headquarters by the FBI assistant for the director of counterintelligence, it was described as coming from a confidential human source. Secret, no foreign or con. Originator controlled. They were pretending like it was legitimate intelligence. It was just a Steele fake blog post. The same FBI agent also testified that Steele had been touting his relationship with the FBI when he tried to persuade media outlets to publish the dossier, illustrating the value to Steele of the FBI association. And that's exactly right. And that's what Michael Sussman did. You go to the FBI, you seed it with them. Then you go to the media, you say the FBI is looking at it. The media says, oh, if the FBI is looking at it, then we got to look at it too. Although the agent who received the Steele dossier came from criminal investigations, that was not the case with the personnel in the Crossfire Hurricane team at the FBI headquarters, which was a group of FBI agents and analysts who were created and organized to investigate Trump and his campaign ties to Russia, and then, of course, spy on his campaign. Now, the Crossfire team was comprised of veteran FBI counterintelligence division agents and analysts. And so it's surprising, therefore, says this report, that FBI Crossfire team was willing, without further vetting, to rely on the dossier to secure surveillance warrants on U.S. citizens and push to include it in a fake report, given the fact that it had bad sourcing, bad bias, and bad credibility problems. Absolutely a fake justification to go spy on Trump, conducted by Hillary. Now, in citing the dossier, they violated the tenets for describing your sources. You have to be able to explain it. Someone said Mr. Steele told a senior Department of Justice official that he was desperate that Trump not get elected and was passionate about him not being president. The guy who wrote the report said that? You mean there's bias there? Also told an FBI agent that he was angry at the FBI for reopening the investigation into Hillary. How dare you do that? And was also terminated by the FBI for being dishonest after that he had violated an agreement with them. Also told the media and media sources he was angry that they were investigating Clinton. Also had admitted to be working for Fusion GPS, a political messaging company retained by the Clinton campaign to generate anti-Trump materials. And so by omitting all of that, they are liars, right? Now, the dossier was also misleading because it was using intelligence terminology that made it seem like it was real. They misleadingly described the dossier as coming from an FBI source. But Mr. Steele was not an FBI source. He had already been fired 2 months before this was published for lying to the Bureau. No one mentioned that. Critical information that should have been clarified. Instead, they described the dossier information as collected from a layered network of identified and unidentified subsources. Although the ICA did not clarify, the FBI and CIA had so few details of the alleged network that they didn't know if this material was all in part fabricated by Steele or if it was even Russian disinfo. Now, while generically mentioning Steele's alleged network, it included identified and unidentified, including, Brennan's best friend, the ICA omitted that FBI and CIA could not even verify the chain of acquisition, the accesses, the reliability, the motivation, or any of it. And compounding the errors, they also included statements through misstatement or omission that were false or misleading based on publicly released FBI information. So how can CIA agents and FBI agents get away with making false or misleading statements and then creating essentially an entire prosecution and impeachment around it and not be prosecuted for that? And Tulsi Gabbard and President Trump are out demanding it. And there is gobs of evidence in this one document. The nature of these misleading statements indicates that the author intended to distract the reader from the many tradecraft problems that made the dossier unreliable. It's intentional manipulation and abuse of office. This raises questions about why the director, Brennan, and Comey insisted this material be included. The report claimed the source collected this information on behalf of private clients. Oh yeah, who are the private clients? The Democrats, Hillary Clinton. Information that the FBI knew, that the CIA knew, And they did not take it, did not mention it. And the Congress would have gotten all of that, right? All of it was kept away from them, shoved down in the appendix. Now, this was extraordinarily important for assessing source motivation and the veracity of his report. And it was intentionally omitted based on the analysis of the testimony of Steele's FBI handler, Fusion GPS officials, and media exposure. Now, the report also excluded that the political messaging firm that was hired was Fusion. And they were also working on behalf of Russian interests to uncover information that was shared with the Kremlin, raising concerns about possible Russian influence on the dossier. So it's not like Trump was doing anything with the Russians. They may have been taking Russian disinfo and using it against Trump. Which, if that is the case, and we're looking at treason charges, and they are now aiding and abetting the enemies of America here, giving aid and comfort in the United States, within the United States, to Russian operatives who are trying to interfere with our election, that's treason. The ICA misleadingly claimed that the source was not compensated for by the FBI, when in fact the FBI did. They paid $25,000 to Steele for his initial report on the dossier before he got fired for lying to them. Now, he didn't receive the money because the FBI bureaucracy had not processed the payment fast enough, and he got fired. And they're like, oh, you lied. That report's fake, so we're not going to pay you for good information. It is not clear, why did the ICA authors decide to cover up these payments? Well, we know why. Because it's going to look terrible for them if they're paying the guy who wrote a report falsely for Hillary and then including that report in their documents. Given the poor quality and the bias of this dossier reporting, this also raises questions about the motivation of James Comey, FBI leadership, in particular, who used government funds to pay for junk produced by a political campaign because it was part of the operation. They needed a source. The ICA also falsely claimed that his reporting appears to have been acquired by multiple Western press organizations starting in October, but the FBI knew at the time because Steele told them that he had delivered the dossier way before that. And according to the testimony of an agent, and later confirmed by Steele and his own testimony in court, Mr. Steele had peddled the dossier to at least 5 outlets. And news outlets already were publishing stuff about that. So the dossier was not accidentally acquired by probing journalists, okay? This guy was shopping it. It is not clear why they covered that up, why it was deliberately fed to the media by the FBI former source, Mr. Steele, as political messaging on behalf of the Clinton campaign. And so the analysis of the dossier also did not take the form of a defensive briefing. The director of the FBI said the credibility of the director's claim, James Comey's claim, that the dossier needed to be included to warn the president that it was out there, is destroyed by the fact that the most essential evidence affecting the credibility of the dossier was intentionally omitted by the FBI. So, in other words, Comey is saying we have to warn the president. We have to tell him about this. That's why we said it. But you didn't give him the full story. You didn't tell him that it was a Hillary op and it was paid for by the FBI and he got fired for lying. Like, you left all of that out. So if you really want to tell the president the truth, you have to tell him the truth, and you didn't do that. A true defensive briefing would have warned Trump, and it would not have omitted this information. Like, in fact, that Carter Page was spied on. It also would have been inappropriate to share defensive briefing who may have had some conflicts, but they left out so much critical information about the origins, the purpose, the sponsors, and they falsely encourage policymakers to draw alarmist conclusions about the dossier's significance. Okay, all the senators like, well, we read the CIA intelligence. They come out to us and they lied. Well, we saw the reports. They just read this report, except a less clean version of this. They didn't even see all this. This was subsequently confirmed by numerous questions and concerns about the dossier. And so it's like, how is it a real country if the people passing legislation don't even get the full stories because our intelligence communities are lying to them and there's no consequences to them because they're actually running things? The ICA, the report from the Coosters, misleadingly claimed that some of the dossier was corroborated. It wasn't. Regurgitated would have been a more descriptive term of the dossier. It wasn't anything. It was parroted media or internet stories or pundit comments. Steele even admitted under oath in a British court that some of the information came from the internet. The dossier offered no other significant or unique testimony. Even according to the deputy director, much of the verified material consisted of broad observations that could be separately surmisable from anything unclassified. And they also claimed that some of the source's information had been corroborated in the past, but they failed to clarify that no significant information from Steele on Putin's covert operations had ever been corroborated. Mr. Steele's reporting from prior years, so like there was like one fact in his report, like, well, Trump has traveled to this city one time. Like, okay, that's true. But, and that has been corroborated. So like Steele's report that Trump at one point did travel to this one city or something. Like, okay, so what? He travels to a lot of cities. But that was corroborated. But they say the whole thing was. Now, or pretend it was. Mr. Steele's reporting from prior years on unrelated criminal matters had no bearing on the veracity of any of this information, and it was misleading for them to equate the two. Man, so much misleading happening here. I wonder why. That distinction became increasingly important as Trump and senior White House officials sought clarification for why the dossier was included. Now, pushing the limits on what might constitute intelligence corroboration, they identify some information from the dossier, information so broad that they could have been acquired from the media or anything. They in turn said it was consistent. It's consistent. The FBI source quoted the three subsources trying to upend liberal order in America and go on with their fake lies. Now, such broad-ranging information could be consistent from all sorts of various reports, and so they're trying to basically paper over Steele's report with other stuff that they can prove. The content of the reports provided largely broad brush information. So I was like, well, Steele's right because he's talking about these things and we know these things are happening. So it's consistent with these other reports, and here are these other reports. Russia saw NATO expansionism as bad. Okay, great. Russia is going to take steps to deter NATO. Great. That's amazing. Like, that's top secret info. No one knows that. Russia had a priority to prevent Georgia, Moldova, and Ukraine from joining NATO. We got it. Now, some of the information from the reports also seemed odd. Putin believed, according to this source, that President-elect Trump's policy would be shaped by Henry Kissinger, and Putin's ultimate aim was a more democratic, multipolar world, and that still would include the U.S. So they say, well, given all of this, it's highly unusual for the authors to choose such a highly classified but poor quality report to demonstrate corroboration. The poor quality reporting did not induce confidence in the dossier at all. It did, though, given the tightly controlled access to the reports, greatly limited access to anyone who just wanted to verify whether the dossier had any corroboration at all. And the misrepresentation of this extended to the White House press briefings. Guess what, Karine? You're next. The director of the FBI visited the White House on February 8th, 2017, where he briefed the dossier among, I'm sorry, that wasn't Karine back at that time. It was Psaki. No, that was also, who was the press secretary back then? It was Obama's press secretary, because that was, before that, it was 16. Robert Gibbs, at one point, he had a bunch of them. He had a bunch of people fly through, so it wasn't Karine. Wishful thinking. Next time. We'll find her eventually. Not in this document. Don't get worried. We'll come back on Karine. She's not out yet. Where he briefed the dossier among other topics. The director wrote a memo for the record immediately where he documented the following. So Comey goes in and meets with Trump. Trump's now in office at 17. The White House chief of staff asked why the dossier materials ended up in the report. He says they're unproven. Comey? The director said, well, he told the chief of staff, analysts from all three agents agreed it was relevant and that portions of the material were corroborated by other intelligence, and I thought it was important that it's included. So Comey's explaining this to Trump. Trump's like, what? In describing the sourcing, he wrote, I explained to the chief of staff that the primary source was credible, and much of it, the dossier, was consistent with and corroborative of other intelligence, right? Much of it. Didn't mention it was a Steele dossier. The director further wrote that his motive for wanting the dossier included was that the incoming President Trump needed to know what was out there. You mean Hillary's fake propaganda was out there. So but You could have told the president that without including it in the report and making it the basis of your assessment that Putin was helping Trump. The FBI director's memo indicates that in the briefing, he largely stuck to the depiction of the dossier. He also, James Comey, conveyed false and misleading information, and he omitted critical acts. That's obstruction and abuse of power. He's supposed to report honestly and truthfully to the president of the United States. Contrary to James Comey's statements and his lies that analysts from all three agencies agreed that the dossier was relevant, he lied. The CIA analysts and senior operation officers had only weeks earlier argued with the FBI, saying, "You shouldn't put it in there, FBI maniacs." And Brennan had to order it included over the objections of all of the other professionals. CIA officers said the NSA had no role in the decision at all. So Comey just made that up too. And it was only pushed by the FBI. So it was highly misleading to tell the White House that the dossier's primary source, Christopher Steele, was credible, when his only credible information came from an unrelated criminal case years prior. So when you hear statements, okay, they're going to play statements of Trump saying, well, I read the report, I got briefed from him, and they're going to say a bunch of, it was all a cover-up, and they thought that they could just get away with it. And they would have if Kamala would have won. None of this would be coming out right now. Mr. Steele's credibility as a source was very much in doubt in February, but the FBI director did not even mention any of that to Trump. To include that Steele was not a source, he was fired for literally lying by the FBI. No significant information had been corroborated at all, except for the previously published open source material. The political messaging company that produced it was hired by the DNC, and Mr. Steele was desperate to stop Trump. The FBI director, James Comey, also failed to mention that only a couple of weeks earlier, FBI agents met with Steele's principal source and learned he had no access to Putin. It was all hearsay upon hearsay, and that he greatly exaggerated the credibility of the material sources according to notes taken by the agents who actually talked to him. In their report, the Coup's people also claimed that some of the FBI sources is consistent with the other judgments, and that Putin ordered the influence effort to defeat Hillary and put Trump in charge. And this was all not correctly cited. There was no intentionality of helping one candidate or another, and it was just made up. Now, in light of all of this, they made false and misleading claims that they did do a good job. They said, our report's amazing. They said, we just saw. They employed misleading source descriptions. They excluded contrary evidence. They misquoted reports. They failed to consider alternative hypotheses. And their references to important state tradecraft fundamentals does not hold up to scrutiny. They say, we do a good job. We describe our sources. We express uncertainty. And we swear we're doing good work as CIA agents. But they didn't. They, in fact, didn't consider any alternative hypotheses. They can't decide what's in the mind of President Putin. There was a single track mind, and they came up with a high impact intelligence judgment. There were three versions of this report being disseminated. We had top secret and limited dissemination, top secret and unclassified. Their general conclusions were available to everyone. So it's just layers. They report, but nobody can see the foundation of the report, which is the Steele dossier. All of this was generated to ensure that there was a lot of publicity because they were trying to create popular fervor and momentum to say that Russia stole it, we should undo it. The report, DNI reported that the highest classified compartmented version was shared with some 250 U.S. officials, which is an extraordinarily high number for such a sensitive document. Yeah, it's a lot. But I mean, if you add all 100 senators, it's not even like all of Congress, right? So you got 435 in the House, 100 in the Senate. It's not even all of Congress got to see it. So the IC, and so it's probably a bunch of Justice Department officials and others. Now, the judgments affected all manner of decisions. This decision, okay, it changed the whole government. It was fake, changed everything. It affected all manner of decisions by executive, legislative, and judicial branches of government, as well as the perceptions of American democracy by U.S. allies, foreign opponents, and U.S. and world media and American citizens. They may have instigated this whole conflict with Russia at this moment because the Ukrainians were providing fake sources to anti-Trump lunatics, and they tried to institute a coup. Collectively, these factors made this a high-impact assessment. It demanded the highest standards of tradecraft. You can't just come out and say that Putin tried to do this without really good evidence to say that. And it was not true. Now, by keeping the most damaging material on Clinton in reserve, Putin was not only demonstrating a clear lack of concern for Trump's election fate, but conversely, his actions could also indicate that he preferred Clinton to be elected, knowing she would be more vulnerable in the aftermath of the election. And they glossed over that. They glossed over the significance of that holding back and didn't want to talk about it. They also didn't address the possibility that even setting aside some of this materials, Russians also knew that Hillary was psychologically demented. The FBI had information from somebody that pointed out the possibility that Putin had reasons to want Hillary to win because he knew where she stood and could work with her. And yeah, says Russia's operation appeared to prioritize post-election influence rather than pre-election influence. Okay, so any Russian activity was like, oh, dang, Trump won. All right, so better figure this one out. And that was all omitted. It's more evidence that Putin's priorities were not focused on election operations that were designed to help Trump win at all. Rather, it was on post-election operations that were trying to undermine the credibility of the election. The report directs the analysis of alternatives and said this could have been another possibility. He didn't really care who won. After it was over, he was going to try to meddle and undermine it. In early August, someone said this, reviewed ongoing leaks of Clinton materials and a bunch of redacted materials here. The ICA timeline of Russian operations shows the last dump of emails began on October 7th, when WikiLeaks started leaking the Clinton campaign manager's emails here. Now, the timing and the context of these discussions addressing possession and leaking of emails suggests that this was deliberately laying low, and there was unspecified material that they were planning to shoot out after the election right when Hillary was setting up, but it didn't work out that way for them. Now, no one specifies which candidate was expected they were going to attack or whatever, but sounds like it was probably Hillary. The strategic plan would only work if it's Hillary, because that's the material they have on her, and they didn't dump it on her because they wanted her to win. Now, while the ICA only considered the one hypothesis that he aspired to help Trump, the alternative hypothesis that Hillary was not considered at all. He had a lot of reasons. Timing suggests the effects of operations were intended to occur after the election was over. From a lot of the reports. In these assessments, they instructed regional directorates to conduct information operations to disseminate negative news stories on Clinton, but after the election. And the allegations included information about how she's coarse with partners and she's an idiot with her little, red button thing. The media influence themes mirror the contents, and this could have been a problem for her, but they didn't do anything. And the timing and the targets did not make sense. If Putin's intent was to ensure Trump won, he should have launched these operations, and he didn't. Had Clinton been elected, these would have helped Russia undermine NATO perceptions of her competence as president. They would have provided rich propaganda opportunities for Moscow to say, you just elected another invalid. And if Putin preferred Trump to win, then we also would have expected to see evidence of that from a lot of other people, but we didn't. The available intelligence actually showed no Putin orders directed or suggested operations intending to elect Trump. No observed Russian operations could only be explained of trying to elect Trump. Just didn't happen. And more. No evidence of attempts to transfer money, no discussions among subordinates or authorities or tactical operators suggesting they were attempting to help Trump win, no indications of orders to not engage in activities that would damage Trump, right? So like lay off of him. They even heard him. They released emails from Colin Powell, who a lot of people have reverence for whatever reason. And he was critical of Trump. Like, oh, Colin Powell, John McCain, they don't like him. The ICA offered no reliable intelligence that indicated or implied that Putin issued orders to conduct any influence operations to denigrate Clinton or to elect Trump, and any leak operations could be attributed to undermining democracy, irregardless of Trump, without regard for Trump. Now, the ICA claims that the judgment, because irregardless is not a word, ICA claims that the judgment that Putin developed a clear preference for candidate Trump is confirmed in part by the public behavior of senior Russian officials and state-controlled media. Now, the ICA assumed, without citing any direct evidence, that the Russian-controlled media could only reflect a Trump wanting a Trump victory. And so their report says Putin and Russian media said that they prefer Trump. And Putin said that. Putin and Russia developed a clear preference for Trump. No, they didn't, you liars. And this was all directly contradicted. In fact, looking at the public statements by public officials in Russia, Moscow's public line can be shown to be exploiting Trump's outsider and underdog status rather than helping him win or publicizing his views. In fact, a positive portrayal of Trump would help Putin exploit him after his defeat as a martyr to the corrupt process, right? So in other words, Putin could say, we want Trump to lose, and then we'll make Trump the martyr. Say, he was the voice of the people and it got stolen from him and all that. Clinton, by contrast, could be presented as being unfairly won. They didn't even consider it. And there's more evidence that directly contradicts their so-called judgment. Following Trump's victory, they note that Russian media began to spin this, saying, wow, this is a popular indictment of U.S. policies and that our country's gone bankrupt. And although they failed to examine the alternative hypothesis for all of this efforts, they just called it Russian propaganda. And the Russians suddenly loved Trump because they wanted him to win. They omitted key intelligence that directly contradicted the claims that Putin loves Trump. In November, a Russian group organized a Trump is not my president rally in New York. So a bunch of Russians were mad and not actually supportive of the effort. Now, in finding number 8, as we come to the near conclusion of this report, the ICA draft was unnecessarily rushed. They rammed it through, just like they rammed through the laptop cover-up letter through the CIA, where they drafted it and got it approved by their board. On December 6, 2016, almost a month after the election, the president, Barack Obama, ordered the directors of the CIA, the FBI, the NSA, to review their work to date on Russia and to quickly procure a new report to include an unclassified version for release in early January. That is all according to CIA officers involved in the report, okay? Other CIA officers are witnesses. They talked to this dude, or whoever wrote this report, and explained it. They said, Obama ordered us to do it. I want an unclassified report on my desk, include all the other crap that you thought was irrelevant, because I want to make it look bad for this dude. So get it to me. They all said, what? The ICA classified and unclassified versions were then disseminated on January 5th and January 6th. The real coup. The real January 6th, which this fake coup attempt on that date. Man, the symbolism is just unnerving. 2 weeks before the inauguration of Trump, suggesting the rushed work schedule was driven by a political motivation to ensure that this was rolled out to Congress and the world by the outgoing administration. Maybe even if they could get it out in time to undermine the counting of the electoral votes. By finishing the ICA before the new president was inaugurated, the outgoing director Brennan retained total control over who could see the raw intelligence, and he hid it even from Congress, who was allowed to review the draft and what comments would be accepted or rejected. Senior experienced CIA officers knew what the standard of care was and knew that he was falling below it, objected. The intelligence doesn't support your judgment at all, saying that Trump had Putin aspiring that he would win. Those officers might have had their voices heard if their publication was delayed until after the inauguration and the new director could have come in and assessed it. But rushing the publication also allowed the outgoing Brennan to lead the briefings to Congress, and he controlled the narrative. He's a key co-conspirator. Now, rushing the analytic process is sometimes necessary, but that did not appear to be the case here. A comprehensive and authoritative review of Russian activities for lessons learned could have been done at a deliberate pace and include a second review by other analysts. The election had passed, and with it, the need for current intelligence update of the sort produced by the fusion cell. But they didn't want to accept the outcomes of the election, right? This was their opportunity to try to seed a reversal of it, saying that Putin stole it. Glaring tradecraft errors identified in this investigation might have been caught and corrected by a more unpressured drafting process, and maybe one with less criminals. Most of the ICA's key points on Russian hacking, except for the Putin assessment, had already been disseminated. Nobody needed to know any of this. Russian hacking had already been covered extensively in the media since June. Now, the Congressional Intelligence Committee were classified, given classified, so Congress, maybe House and Senate, in September and December on Russian election interference. They already knew, primarily covering the hacking and leaking of emails and Putin's objective about the real objective, which is just to undermine American elections. The judgment that Putin aspired to help Trump was not formally briefed to members until after the publication of the new fake report. The allegation that Putin preferred Trump was only published in one close hold President's Daily Brief article on August 2nd, 2016. In August and September, Brennan also gave oral briefings conducted separately to 8 senior congressional leaders using sensitive reporting, but with no written product. Okay, so Brennan goes around, tells everybody what they want to hear, and it was not possible to determine if they got the same details. Virtually all significant classified reports cited by the report had been collected prior to the election, and the paltry new intelligence that they cited from those reports did not justify rushing the product. There's not like any new smoking gun that just dropped. CIA officers commented that the process for reviewing this was complicated and it was rushed. They used sensitive compartmented reporting. Few analysts could even access the whole thing. And by the order, and they were also producing an unclassified version. Together, these factors created disincentives against objecting to misquoting of sources or to challenging questionable reasoning. Just 5 CIA analysts were directed by John Brennan to write the report. Who were they? With one analyst doing most of it. Who was it? Only 3 of the analysts had been cleared into the compartmented materials in the 4 months since the director's fusion cell was established. The 5 authors would later express their astonishment to the committee that management made no significant changes to their draft during the review process, something unheard of for such a high-profile paper. Some reviewers said they only saw select segments and that they were cleared for, and so I don't even know how it fits. Like, I can only see that paragraph versus that paragraph. One key CIA analytic manager was unaware of the concerns regarding that one sentence fragment that was totally made up that played such a significant role in the judgments of Putin's intentions. After reviewing the critical report, the manager admitted to not having been read on to the various compartmented materials until December 19th, 3 days before the final product went out, and that the officer had thus not even read the raw reporting, just shoved it in at the last minute. Now, a senior operational manager said that they did not see the draft until days before it was published, when they voiced objections about some judgments to Brennan. It was in the context of this fast approaching deadline, rush to get this done, don't make any changes. And so the recommendations come here. Now, that's nice recommendations, like improve peer review. Great. That's all great. But we've got one recommendation right now. Indict them. Okay. You indict them all, saying here's more of the timeline. Trump wins December 5th. The House Intelligence Committee gets the first post-election intelligence briefing. No mention of Putin aspiring anything. Then December 6th, Obama orders a rewrite of the assessment. They've got that on the 6th. The president directed the intelligence community. Obama directed the intelligence community to update your work on the Russian influence. Quickly get me a new release for early January before Trump takes office, because we can stop him. The ICA would rehash much of it, but it would also include the judgment of an aspiration for Trump. 5 CIA analysts wrote it, and it got to Brennan by December 22nd. The authors would later say, I can't believe he didn't change anything. It was a terrible report. We had no idea what we're doing. Nobody saw anything, and they just used it. Acting on President Obama's orders, on December 9th, Brennan directed a full review and publication of raw human intelligence information that had been collected before the election of all the fake stories. CIA officers said that some of this information had been held on the orders of Brennan. Brennan's like, don't use that. Okay, now use that. While other reporting had been judged by experienced officers to not have met the long-standing publication standards. And that would be very sneaky, right, of Brennan you kind of have that in your back pocket. Let me have a bunch of you need a scapegoat, so you want to always have somebody you can blame. He's like, well, let me just have this whole binder of Russian useful tools, and he's just going to go pull them out when he needs them. He needed one now. Some of the latter was unclear from the unknown subsources and would nonetheless be published after the election, but none of it supports the claim of Putin's aspiration. So then on January 6, 2017, the date of the real insurrection by the Cousters called Obama, treasonous sedition conspirators, says the ICA is officially launched. On January 5th, the most sensitive classified version was briefed to Obama and shared with 250 people in the administration. Then on January 6th, they gave it to Trump, and the unclassified version was posted on the website. The unclassified key judgments were identical to the classified versions. They said Putin developed a clear preference for Trump and aspired to help Trump by discrediting Secretary Clinton. All fake, all fraudulent, all part of a massive conspiracy by these insurrectionists who wanted to take control of the nation by creating fake reports and abusing their positions of power to do so. So there better be consequences for this. We hope that they will be coming soon. And we got more reaction on this from some senators. And so Tulsi Gabbard was also responding to some of this. Here's a little bit more from her press briefing today.
The Intelligence Committee's oversight report reveals that CIA Director Brennan overruled senior CIA officers who challenged the Obama-ordered intelligence assessment, stating, quote, "We don't have direct information that Putin wanted to get Trump elected." Yet, the Obama-directed assessment was published on January 6, 2017, which explicitly stated, quote, "We assess Putin and the Russian government aspired to help President-elect Trump's election chances when possible by discrediting Secretary Clinton and publicly contrasting her unfavorably to him." End of quote. The CIA and FBI, then led by John Brennan and James Comey, expressed high confidence in this judgment, while the NSA expressed moderate confidence. Yet, as the report we released today shows, the ICA, the Intelligence Community Assessment, did not cite any report where Putin indicated helping Trump win was an objective.
All made
The
up.
opposite is true. With regards to the Steele dossier, we now know that one of the source documents that the Obama administration used in the creation of this intelligence assessment in January of 2017 was none other than the discredited, unverified Steele dossier. The House Intel report states, quote, "Contradicting public claims by then CIA Director Brennan that the dossier was not in any way incorporated into this intelligence assessment.
Liar!
The dossier was referenced in the intelligence assessment's main body text and further detailed in a 2-page assessment annex."
All right, they're all getting called out by name. They all manipulated their positions of power. They all abused their office. They all did it to try to stop an incoming president from exercising the full power of his office and maybe not even get into office if there's enough. The thesis was they're going to release this report. Media is going to hyperventilate. There'll be some demand for a new election or a recounting of the electoral votes or invalidate it in some way. And then they can continue to install Hillary, who everyone thought was going to win. And she got stolen out from under her. We know what they tried to do. Tulsi Gabbard explaining a criminal referral now going over to the DOJ. And it includes Obama. And so we're going to keep our eye on this one, my friends. Thank you for subscribing and joining as we do. Thanks for sharing this video so people can take a look at what is inside this disgusting report and just how corrupt the Democratic Party is, starting at the top with Barack Obama. All right, so we got some more good stuff here. We got reaction on a lot of this from some senators. Congress reacting to Tulsi Gabbard's latest MOTHERLODE drops. We got Marsha Blackburn posting this one saying, "Thank you, Tulsi Gabbard. We now have proof that Obama and his officials manufactured the Russian collusion hoax. This is why draining the swamp is more important than ever. and we better see some draining. We don't want to see talking, bloviating about this. Here is Marcia.
That's right. Now we do know, and thank goodness that DNI Gabbard released 100 documents so that people can see, here's the proof. This is what they were doing. They knew Hillary was creating this dossier. So then they go in, and Obama's team is all informed, and then they start to create a diversion, and they try to make it about Trump. Here is what we know. The bureaucracy and the swamp has got to be drained. These people that are careers over at the FBI and the DOJ that have participated in this need to be shown the door. There are prosecutions
and the prison
that
cell
should take place. This is weaponizing the federal government against a citizen, against a political opponent, because the American people are not doing what you want them to do. This is the kind of thing that we thought was going on. We had some pretty good ideas it was going on, some pretty good anecdotal evidence it was happening, and now they have shown the receipts. Let the prosecutions begin.
Let them begin. Thank you, Marcia. I hope that the Senate continues to push for this because we want justice. Now, Mike Pompeo, who ran the CIA before, who could have given us a lot of this information that John Brennan is a lying hack, didn't. Now he's out with the statement, and here is what he said. The notion that Trump colluded with Russia has always been false, and the politicization of our intelligence services in the service of that hoax did enormous damage to public trust. Like, weren't you in that office, Mike? Where were you?
If you're Vladimir Putin, would you rather have Joe Biden or Donald Trump as the president of the United States? The answer is really easy. You invaded Ukraine when President Biden was there. You invaded Ukraine when President Obama was there. You didn't touch the darn thing when President Trump was there. I think it actually proves itself. But if you want to get even deeper about the things we did in the first Trump administration, we provided defensive weapon systems to Ukraine. Obama refused. Biden didn't want to do it. We made energy prices low by building here, drilling here. That hurt Putin dramatically. We put an enormous number of sanctions on the Russian regime. We had real deterrence. And I am confident that the second version of Trump, the second term of President Trump, will do precisely the same. This narrative that somehow President Trump or Donald Trump was a Russian asset or connected to Putin or that Putin had some goods on him has always been false. It's always been known to be false, and yet was distributed by the mainstream media and by a White House that was determined to push back against the lost election.
Yeah, and Mike, you guys could have released that back when you actually came in there. Okay, Brennan left, you came in, you didn't give us any materials, and now you're still shilling for Ukraine. Give me a break. All right, so we got that. Now, Jim Jordan was also out today. He was reacting to some of this over on with the folks at Fox, and here's what Jim Jordan had to say after the Tulsi Gabbard announcement.
Out to you.
Well, it looks like they altered what the intelligence community assessment originally was. Remember, they had the meeting in the White House on December 9th. You got all the key players there. You got McCabe, you got Brennan, you got Clapper, you got the president, you got Loretta Lynch, you got all the key players there. And they say, time out, we're going to manufacture and massage the existing intelligence community assessment and make it what Director of National Intelligence Gabbard just talked about. So they manufactured and massaged the document, and then look at what happened next. A few weeks later, they go to Trump Tower. I think this is so critical because they tried to undermine the election. That didn't work with the dossier and everything else, spying on President Trump's campaign. We know that took place. That didn't work. So they said, now we're going to undermine his presidency. They go to Trump Tower on January 6th to brief President-elect. January 6, 2017, President-elect Trump. President-elect Trump thinks this is the normal briefing the incoming president's going to get from the intelligence community, but it's not, Martha. It's a setup. And they brief him on the dossier. That then gets leaked to the press, and thereby giving credibility to a document they already knew was bogus. They do all that to undermine the presidency, and of course that launches the Mueller investigation and everything else they did. So when you match what Tulsi Gabbard has brought forward with actual events that take place, December 9th meeting in the White House, January 6, 2017 meeting in Trump Tower where they brief him on the dossier, you match it all up, I think it clearly shows they were trying to undermine the president. And of course, that's why Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, has referred this to the Department of Justice.
And we hope Pam Bondi does something about it. We know that she created her strike force and is going to be working on catching the ball that Tulsi has thrown her way. Now, this was one guy who was presumably in the room with the rest of the Coosters, who got a big fat settlement from the FBI and is like a hero now for libs on MSNBC because they love people who will violate their ethical duties to win for the Democratic Party no matter what. He was out, and here is what he said about all this. He sounds a little nervous.
Classified agrees in large part with what we determined, but of course differs on that count. So the idea that she would use this discussion around sourcing and intents of Russians as some sort of springboard for charges against Barack Obama or John Brennan or Jim Comey or anyone else is absurd. And, and she either knows it's absurd and she's doing it anyway, or the director of national intelligence actually doesn't understand the nuances of intelligence, which should concern a lot of Americans.
That's hilarious, coming from the guy who was a part of the reporting process that we just read about, saying that Tulsi has no intelligence. My friend, you guys were the ones using the Steele dossier. Totally ridiculous from him. And Caitlin Collins was also shilling for the standard mainstream media litany here. And here was what the question sounded like when she lobbed it back towards Tulsi and Caroline.
Just on this, Director Gabbard, you referenced the past intelligence reports and assessments on this, including that 2017 one that was signed off, as Ed noted, by every Republican on the Senate Intelligence Community.
Yeah, and hear that dumb question? It's because those Senate Republicans who all signed off on it got fake information from the CIA. They didn't even get the report that we just read.
Including the acting chair of the time, now Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who said in a statement that they did not find any evidence of Russian collusion, but they did find, however, is very troubling, and they found irrefutable evidence of Russian meddling.
Okay, meddling, which again is a meaningless word. And a lot of this was the meddling in the context of aspiring to help Trump, and they stole the election to denigrate Hillary, and Trump's election is illegitimate. Hillary even saying she had it stolen from her.
One, are you saying that he's wrong in that statement that he made then? And secondly, what would you say to people who believe that you're only releasing these documents now to improve your standing with the president after he said that your intelligence assessments were wrong?
Well, first, I want to correct something that you stated, which was...
That's from Caitlin Collins to the Director of National Intelligence. Wild.
Was citing the Senate Intelligence Committee's report as being one and the same. I think you said the intelligence community. The Senate Intelligence Committee has a very different function than the Office of the Director of National Intelligence. The evidence and the intelligence that has been declassified and released is irrefutable. I'm going to let Caroline speak to Secretary Rubio.
I'll speak to both questions. First, on Secretary Rubio, he put out a statement in 2020 following that Senate Intelligence Committee report, and he said what they found is troubling. We found irrefutable evidence of Russian meddling, which the Director of National Intelligence just confirmed for all of you, that Russia was trying to sow distrust and chaos. But what's the outrage in this that Secretary Rubio did not say at the time, the Democrats were saying at the time, is the fact that the intelligence community was concocting this narrative that the president colluded with the Russians, that the president's son was holding secret meetings with the Russians, all of these lies that were never true. And he also said at that time, we discovered deeply troubling actions taken by the FBI under Comey, particularly their acceptance and willingness to rely on the Steele dossier without verifying its methodology or sourcing. The Steele dossier that many outlets in this room ran as the gospel truth, and it was cooked up and paid for by the Clinton campaign. As for your second question, Caitlin, I think who is saying that she would release this to try to boost her standing with the president? Who has said that?
Well, the
CNN
president has publicly undermined her when it came to Iran. He said she was wrong. He told me that she didn't know what she was talking about. That was on Air Force One on camera.
The only people who are suggesting that the Director of National Intelligence would release evidence to try to boost her standing with the president are the people in this room who
like
constantly try to sow distrust and chaos amongst the president's cabinet, and it is not working. I will just answer your question directly. I am with the President of the United States every day. He has the utmost confidence in Director Gabbard. He always has. He continues to. And that is true of his entire cabinet, who is all working as one team to deliver on the promises this president made.
Yeah, so you can take your insulting question, Caitlin, and take it back to CNN. All right, so we also got one more from Ron Johnson. He was out Great senator. And he says there better be some consequences on this. Here is Ron.
The extent that he and top members of his administration interfered in the 2016 election, then later on in the 2020 election, do I need to remind you about the 50 intelligence officials that were pretty well ginned up by members of of our former Secretary of State to provide that letter, said that the Hunter laptop had all the earmarks of a Russian information campaign when the FBI had possession of it and knew it was genuine. I want the press to be honest. I want Pulitzer Prizes to be returned. They were either duped or complicit in pushing that false narrative that put America in political turmoil for years. It's continuing to go on, all based on a Hillary Clinton dirty trick, the Steele dossier, that those guys knew was a dirty trick, and yet they used that to gin up the Mueller investigation, impeachments, everything else. Listen, this is, again, election interference, orders of magnitude worse than anything Russia or China ever could hope to achieve. And that was orchestrated by President Obama, President Biden, John Brennan, and that whole cast of characters. And again, I've known this. The American people should have known it, but it was never really covered by the legacy media.
Yeah, and because the intelligence communities covered it up. So there better be some consequences for this. It certainly looks like it is trending that way. We got lots of pressure from Congress. Tulsi's out talking about it. Trump's talking about it from the Oval Office, and the evidence is clear as day. We've read through, I don't know how many pages now, 150 pages of stuff so far, like this week, that we've covered that is just exploding day by day. The evidence is going to continue to compound. And as we all know here, no one is above the law, not even Barack Obama. All right, my friends, what a beautiful day it has been. Okay, thanks for hanging with us on that long one. Long read, but I think it's kind of a historic day, so we wanted to really spend some time on that. So thanks for being a part of anchoring that document into the ether and letting it linger there for all eternity. We appreciate your help on that. All right, so my friends, now it's time to hear from you. Thank you for supporting our work here. Thank you for sending in these donos, bringing in new membos, making everything we do here possible. I'm really grateful for you. We got Bill Tong is here, of course. What's going on? We got some great comments here. Hey, it's Wednesday. It's hump day, middle of the week, all downhill from here. It's Snoopy. Hello, hump day. Have a nice day. What a peaceful GIF here. Aren't these beautiful GIFs? Are like nice transitions. We just read about total corruption and criminality embedded throughout multiple layers of our government. And then we can return here to Snoopy. What a nice thing. Hey, JM Clay. What's up, JM Clay? Thank you, JM, for becoming a member. We'll see you on the after party. We will have YouTube membos. Stick around. We'll hang out for a bit. Rub some dirt on it. It says, hey, shout out to his name is Robert Paulson. His name is Robert Paulson for carrying the torch of emotional damage in my absence. It's true. I got hit yesterday. Hey, thanks for putting the pieces together for Rob that you were happy he manned up and knelt down for the proposal. Rob gets the head nod from us. I did the knee. I took the knee thing. Definitely. Yeah, I'm a traditional guy. So I think that was very appropriate. Yeah. Took that knee. Here you go. Look at this thing. All right. Yeah, it was great. What's up? Emotional damage. And we appreciate all the people who give me a proper good, needling when is necessary. Rub some dirt on it. Is Galaxy Whirlpool. Got me this book. He's like, will you use it for once in your life? Do something. Thank you. Rub some dirt on it. Hey, Alan Duckett. Hey, Rob, let's start a pool on criminal charges. Yeah, that's a good one. That sounds fun. Hey, are those on Polymarket? Yeah, that'd be a fun one. You could go wager on Polymarket. That's not a bad idea. Alan Duckett, proceeds can go to your fam's benefit house. Start a pool on it. So does the pool manager make some funds or something, or do you have to win the pool? It's not a bad idea, Alan. It sounds like a fun one. Hey, Sean is here. What's up, Sean? Thank you for becoming a membo. Actually, you already are a membo. Thank you for sending in a very nice dono and being number one in the chat. Charles Sean. Sorry about that S there. Charlie Sean, I think. Charlie, thank you for being here. Really nice dono. We appreciate it. Thanks for watching the show and being a membo and supporting us. Hey, Off-Label Podcast, what's up? Says, you, us, and Sweeney talking about what constitutes treason on Saturday when you can. Sweeney and I have talked about it before, but deep dive this time. Sweeney, the author? We'll see if we can make it off label. Thanks for the invite. What's going on? Cheryl Johnson. But if I can't make it, have an amazing stream. Cheryl Johnson says, no Kilmar today. I want the skinny. I know, man. So I had a judgment call to make, and we made a judgment call on spending all day on this one story. I thought it was a very important story, so I really wanted to make sure it was on the record, I guess. But we also had Ghislaine Maxwell updates, okay? James Comer just sent a subpoena to her today, so we got Ghislaine Maxwell, we got Epstein stuff. I think Congress is getting into it. We've got, and then Kilmar. Yeah, so Judge Zenas, oh my goodness, Judge Zenas is now saying that Kilmar can't be deported. So we'll have to come back on that tomorrow. I don't know what we're going to do tomorrow. We got so much to catch up on today. We had to spend our time on this one. Hey, but yeah, Cheryl John, I know. So we made the decision today. But we'll get caught up. We'll do Kilmar and probably Epstein stuff tomorrow. You only get one of these days, okay? The Director of National Intelligence doesn't come out and say, I'm making a criminal referral for Obama. It's a big, giant deal. I think it's equivalent. Like, remember how we felt on the other end when they came out and they appointed a special prosecutor and they're prosecuting Trump? Like, what is all this crap? I think it's basically the same, the same kind of momentum or impact. It's a big one. Sharpie guy. Hey, hello, Rob. Learn these words. Baby doll, honey, sweetheart. Those are some good ones. I just say, yo, mama. Use them often. And these sentences. You're right, ... I was wrong. I'm sorry. Hug, sweetheart. Keys to my long and beautiful marriage, Rob. And if they work for me, they're going to work for you. That's good advice, Sharpie guy. That is good advice. But in order for that to happen, I would have to be wrong for once. I don't know if that's going to happen. Lil Roo. Hey, I read all of these documents Tulsi released. At one point, I started thinking, I don't know. Then the documents smacked me. Okay, they're screwed. Jiggy Dance. Much love from Scotland. Hey, shout out Little Roo from Scotland. Little Roo in the house. 004. Thank you for that. Yeah, there's a lot, man. There's a lot to this. And the report was just failure, gross failure, unbelievable, totally misleading, outright fraudulent. They didn't say outright fraudulent, but like basically that. Sandy, levying war against the USA also means attacking critical infrastructure. Both Obama and Trump designated our elections as critical infrastructure in executive orders. And ironically, Obama did it in January 2017 before Trump took office as they were executing this conspiracy. Treason fits, says Sandy. Tulsi has whistleblowers as the two witnesses. So even under the Constitution, she's got it. And we highlighted that multiple times in the report, right? CIA, and they said several times, ordered by the president. Got him. Uncle Bozy, I know that the Mar-a-Lago raid could possibly result in a prosecution in that judicial district, but since these crimes directly affect all 50 states, will it be possible to try every person charged up to and including Obama in any judicial district in the country since the DC jury pool is compromised? Yeah, it's a good question, Uncle Bozy. I don't know what the basis would be for the other people. It depends on the act. Like what are the overt acts and where were the majority of the acts? And do they have a nexus to the forum, essentially? So for the Oval Office meeting, that's in DC. And I don't know how you really get around that. Maybe Congress can disband the DC circuit, but I think a lot of the action was in Washington, DC. And so that will be a part of the problem, no doubt. If they can even get an indictment. Uncle Bozy. Hey, Don is here. Clapper, but I think they absolutely should try. And I think if you could charge them in Florida as an extension of the Mar-a-Lago raid, you just say that was the apex of the conspiracy because they had to come back and get the documents. Then you just charge them down there in Florida, all of them. And they can file for a change of jurisdiction or something. Or, but it would be a motion to dismiss. They would just say it's the wrong jurisdiction. Don't. Clapper was the Colin Powell of Obama's administration. Yeah, that's a very good analogy, Doan. Absolutely. Colin Powell. All these people talk this into Iraq and they're now coming out and mad about Trump. Chatbot bro. What's up, chatbot bro? In the house. Welcome aboard. This old guy, as a new member, we'll see you on the after party. This old guy says, I think this is to some extent a case of the Obama political machine running out of control and too late. If they'd done this before November 2nd, 16, it would have been a late October surprise. but they did it after the election. So Trump was already president-elect. So it was a seditious attack on the duly elected government of the USA. The Democrats just thought they could continue their dirty tricks. Yeah, and I think were so confident that Hillary was going to win that it wouldn't have made a lot of sense for them to launch that before. Then, right, we saw this as the election narrowed. Then Hillary started to freak out. Then we saw Jake Sullivan make that post about, computer scientists saw collusion with Yoda phones or whatever. New Star, remember all that. So I think it was an after the fact. It's like, we lost. We have no idea how this happened. We were already rigging it. We were already investigating Trump separately for Crossfire Hurricane. And then we just made up this Russia thing. So it's like separate. There's a lot of layers to this. And they were also defending Hillary again and colluding with the FBI to make sure she didn't get prosecuted. Yeah, it's an attack on the entire infrastructure. I'm an American man, what's up, says, since Obama committed treason, why is Obama getting the white privilege treatment by not being arrested? That is interesting. Yeah, it's going to be a very interesting thing to compare and contrast. Trump got indicted or prosecuted 4 times, 2 federally, 2 at the state level, 1 by Fannie, 1 by Alvin, and the other by Jack Smith. And so the idea that Obama can't be arrested, I hear a lot of people saying that right now. Like, yeah, right, you're not going to go after a president. If they don't, then they're going to neuter themselves in this administration. After everything that's been released, they will neuter themselves, and their legacy will be devastated if they don't do anything about it. Ray Ronk, what's up? Conspiracy theorists continue to bat 1,000. I know, it's wild. I think I told you guys, I saw that one dude with a shirt on. He had the tick marks, like, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It said over here, experts, and said over here, conspiracy theorists. And on the one side, there was 0 tick marks, and then the other one's like, the whole shirt was tick marks all the way down for the conspiracy theorists, because we're right. So they call it a conspiracy when they get caught. Jeffrey Adams, is the race on to roll first? Is the race on to roll first? Oh, for the board? Bets? Any bets on this? Yeah. Well, seditious conspiracy, I think, is probably the higher odds. Like, if you're going to go over under, it's probably seditious conspiracy. Treason's a big one. But you probably get better odds if you go treason. Silly Rabbit, tricks are for kids. Hey, Tricks Bandit. Thank you, Tricks, for bringing in membos over on Rumble. Hey, thank you, Tricks. Dropping membos and bouncing. Obook got one. Michael Peck, what's up, Rich M? Androdite is here, and Donna Greathouse, all gifted membos, courtesy of Tricks Bandit. Thank you, Tricks. 7 months as a membo. That one came in as well. Awesome to have you. 7 months as a membo. Rubos are here. President Trump gives remarks on winning the AI race. I was watching that this afternoon. Trump said, we're going to win it. Be better. Otherwise, we're in big trouble. Doan says, Putin has goods on Barry and Hillary. He kept it till he needed it, but its value is going down fast. Hillary's servers and Blackberries were all open source. Yeah, there's a lot of those emails leaked, and she deleted a bunch of them. Comey admitted that, and she got away scot-free too. So she should be included on the list. Hey, Bullsack Teabag Inc. Bullsack Teabag Inc. is here. Welcome aboard as a supporter to Teabag Incorporated. Andy Q. I love Trump. Can we have him when you're done? Says our friends in the UK. UK for Trump, Andy Q. Answer, no. Get your own. We love our friends in the UK, but the answer is just no. Okay, so I should have been nicer about that. Sorry about that, Andy. I know we were friends, but I just get sensitive about that. So, no. How about that? So, Andy, thank you. But you guys do need somebody like Trump. You guys need somebody who's, British and likes tea and crumpets. Trump is not tea and crumpets certified. Alan is the bestest. What's up, Alan Harkin? Alan, what a nice dono. Really nice to have you. Awesome analysis on this more than overdue confirmation of the rot in DC regarding Trump. I won't go on about your awesome delivery and ability to explain this complex that is old news at this point. Thank you, Alan Harkin. It is kind of old. Like, we knew it was going on. I don't think we've ever read a document like that before that they confirm Congress didn't even get, and then Tulsi releases it, and we're like, oh, now here it is. I mean, we've read declassified documents and stuff before, but this was all, like, Congress was in the cover-up as well. They got duped. They all got fed Russian disinformation from our intelligence community. Maybe Steele Dossier, maybe influenced by Russia, bought it, got it. Brennan, Comey, Clapper created it, and then shoved it down America's gullets. And now we get vindication. We get confirmation of it. So we knew they did it, but now we can see it in black and white. And now we hear the word criminal referral. And we've got Strike Force now happening. So that sounds pretty cool. I don't know if they're going to have a logo or like a badge or something. But I mean, if I'm on Strike Force, I definitely want something like that. That's for sure. So Alan, thank you as always, my man, for being here. Thanks for being with us for so long. You've seen this story percolating over the years. And so we're really glad to have you here. Thanks for sending in a nice dono, Alan, as always. Very generous, and we're grateful for you. We appreciate you. Have a beautiful night. What's up? King of Biltong is here. Hey, King of Biltong, you know what to go. It's called BiltongUSA.com. Do you even know what Biltong is? It's high protein, no additives, authentic handcrafted meat, and it's delicious, naturally air-dried, and it's got all sorts of good stuff. Use code Robert, 10% off at BiltongUSA.com. Generic Derek. Yo, Rob. One of my favorite L's I've seen the DOJ take was when that Russian media firm actually turned up to testify in Washington against expectation and called their bluff. The DOJ folded immediately and then threw it out. They threw the case straight out. I don't think it was an actual court case testimony, though. Maybe a deposition of some sort. Very funny, though. I don't remember that one, Generic Derek. That's interesting. So the DOJ was attacking him like, well, we'll show up and answer your questions. Like, oh, crap. We weren't expecting that. Rob. My show on, hey, show my Obama meme holding a cracked BlackBerry and being told to remain silent. Says, Obama, what happened to your BlackBerry? Obama, you better not speak or you give evidence against yourself. It's true. Obama should exercise his right to remain silent. It's the right legal thing to do, even if we want him to talk. Curtis B. What's up, Curtis B? Patrick Assalone in the house. What's up, Patrick A? Coming in here, courtesy of Curtis B. Thank you, Curtis B. Welcome, Patrick A. WHBP is in the house. White House Bureau of Professionalism. Jody Ploker is here. Gifted a membo. Karen, HHH Custom Knives. Sounds cool. Santa La O, Kimberly, all gifted membos, courtesy of WHBP. Thank you, WHBP, for bringing in 5 new membos. 5 new membos. Welcome aboard. Let's get whoever took the intel leak at BuzzFeed. Yeah, add him to the list, too. Who caught that? And then decided that that is good evidence and they should publish it and then act as useful tools of an intelligence operation. Hey, Christina. Rob, I won't be online when you read this, but I'll catch up later. I'm asking for prayers over my dad. Major surgery in the morning. Thanks. Christina, prayers up for Papa Christina. Going to be under the watchful eye of our Heavenly Father and being cared for by amazing medical experts with tremendous care and precision. He'll heal, he'll return to us all, and we'll be waiting for the good news. Christina, thank you for that. Prayers up for Papa Christina. Don't. Hey, remember Comey sending 2 FBI agents as honeypots into Trump's campaign shortly after announcing his candidacy in 2015? Yeah, off record and Comey driving. Yeah, and then they spied on the campaign, got FISA warrants. The whole thing was a scam. Hey, Mr. Man in the house. What's going on over here? Mr. Man. Oh, it's a Minecraft thing. Maybe. Mr. Man, your perseverance on this topic is outstanding. Take a drink. Well, we'll drink when they get charged with treason. No time for hydration. We have to save our country. Hey, Philip. Hey, so Mr. Man, first of all, I almost skipped over that. Very nice dono. Thank you for that. We appreciate it. And thanks for hanging with us through the long. I know sometimes these long reads can be kind of monotonous, but man, there's good information in there. We got to get it out into the spotlight. We're spotlighting it. You know? Mr. Man, thank you for the very nice dono. Thanks for watching over on Rumble or maybe on YouTube, and for being amazing. Very nice of you. Thank you for that. Mr. Man 487 in the house. Hey, Villa Platt. Rob, thank you for helping us get over the hump of the hump day. We're doing it together, Villa Platt, and we're doing it with prospective treason charges now. Rob, President Obama said to do everything by the book. Yeah, no, that's right. Don't break the law. Oh, no, I won't break the law. It's just the Russians. Yeah, don't do it by the book. Okay. Sharpie guy, hey, for sure, Rob, they know it. You know it, that we're right, but deferring to it saves being exiled to the Hopi. Not the Arizona Hopi, but phonetics, the Y's. Got it. Reservation for a serious dry spell. Rob, my friend, this is good advice. Blessings, friends. I'm a big fan of the Hopi Indians, to be honest with you. They've got the Kachinas and very cool culture around that. And they think they came out of, the Grand Canyon, basically. It's pretty cool. Trino Galaxy says, I hate to say this, but I'm not sure we have seen enough to say Obama ordered the falsification of the report. He definitely ordered a report, just not necessarily the sack of lies that we got. Yeah, I think that's right. So that's what his statement will be. Well, I was advised that there were other reports out there. And so I said, just go include those in your new assessment and let me know. Obama will say, I didn't have the full universe of facts. Now I do. So that's going to be his plausible deniability. But I think what they'll show is that he got like story after story after story. No interference, no meddling, nothing. And then suddenly there's this reversal. What happened there? Why is everything going against the grain now? And everybody's saying you ordered it. And then the conclusion changed from what it was, almost like you ordered them to go find something. So I think it's going to be harder to have direct evidence like Obama. There's going to be very little of him saying, I order you to make a false report. He would never say that, obviously. Doesn't have to. Everybody else is going to do that. And they did. So you're not going to find evidence of that. So it's going to be more circumstantial. It's like circumstantial evidence. You go to bed, there's no snow. You wake up, there's snow. Did you see it snow? No, you didn't. But it's on the ground, and so you can infer it snowed. It's circumstantial. Well, it's there. The circumstance shows that it probably came from the sky. There's no snowblower around here. There's nobody delivering snow, and it's snowing everywhere. So everybody's got snow. So it's probably the snow. It snowed, but it's circumstantial evidence. So kind of the same thing with Obama. We don't have direct evidence that he did it, but all of the other things just show this pattern of complicity. And it'd be like, anybody else acting out of the ordinary, like pick your job, like you do something, you deliver evidence into the evidence locker every time. Evidence in the locker, evidence in the locker, evidence in the locker, evidence in the locker. Then you take that crack and you put it in Hunter's nose, not in the locker, and you deviated from the pattern of normality and the presumption of, good faith operations, and you undermine that. Hey, Diane K. Lacey, John McCain received and read the McCain-Red dossier before giving it to Comey. That's what I thought. I thought that he got the Steele dossier on December 9th, and he was on the Intel Select Committee. He had to see the connection. Yeah, I felt like I read that too, that John McCain got it and was very anti-Trump and wanted to pass that up the chain to undermine his victory. Thank you, Diane. I do remember reading that. Rob says, we didn't see that today in the document too much. It said some other Rome source, right, is what Steele sent it to some FBI agent in Rome at the time. Rob, Obama approved everything they did by allowing it under his order to create it. And he's being called out by name right now, and rightfully so. My friends, thank you for sending those in. Amazing donos. Very grateful for your support. Thanks for being here watching the show. We got Essential Bites says, if you need to better understand what's going on, this is for you. And we had some good comments over on X. What's up, Rob? What's up, Essential Bites over there? And so, my friends, what a beautiful stream it has been. Thank you for hanging with us. Tomorrow, we'll get back into some other stories, get a little bit more variety in on the day. But I think today was a historic day. I think that we saw a big announcement, and we've got a strike force being formed. And so it feels like we're on the precipice of something big. And so we're going to keep our eye on this. Thank you for joining as we do. Before we wrap it up on the night, we want to thank our amazing mods and meme smiths on the day. Shout outs to K Bean, Carrie B for clipping for us. We got John and Donut modding the fort down for us, along with Neuro D, Janek, and Dog Digger, Gigum, Elliot, and Just Rhonda. We appreciate everybody helping out here. Thank you for making the show amazing. We've got a bunch more to get to for the rest of the week. And of course, we are going to come back tomorrow to get into it again. But in order to do that appropriately, we are going to need to see you right back here so that together, with your help, we can shine that big, beautiful spotlight of accountability and transparency down upon our system with the hope of finding justice. Make it a beautiful night, my friends. Sleep very well. I'll see you right back here tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Thanks for watching. marching, my beautiful friends. Now it's that time where the stream must end. You brought the heat with every chatting line. Together we exposed corruption. One more time we dove in the truth where the media hides. Lit up the lies with receipts on all sides. The fight isn't over, but we made them sweat. We ain't done yet, no, not just yet. Because together we are watching the watchers, truth on our side. Watching the watchers, we won't be denied. Watching the watchers, eyes open wide. Fighting for freedom with nothing to hide. Drop a like and don't forget to share. And bring a friend who's ready to care. Tomorrow's lies are just today's news, but here